Hello and welcome to the first episode of Hacker Behind the Code with me, MarkeyJester. This is a radio-esque podcast where we'll interview members from the Sonic hacking community. We'll be finding out how they grew up with the series, how they came into the scene, what projects they've been working on, and where they're heading. My guest today is one who I would personally define as the encyclopaedia of Sonic 1 objects. He's been around for a fair number of years and considered one of the experts on level layout structuring, and dare I say he has an interesting story of how he got his first Mega Drive. D.A. Garden will be joining me. This interview is almost 4 hours long, so if you're looking to waste 4 hours or need some sort of chatting in the background while you work, then this might be for you. We'll also be taking a few breaks, playing some music from a few of our community members. Project FM has music from an upcoming project, while Mr. Cat Pixel offers music featuring his accordion playing skills. I checked up with him afterwards and can confirm, yes, that's really him playing it IRL. This is a pilot episode. If people enjoy this episode enough, then maybe I'll arrange another episode with another community member, but we'll see. I'd also like to apologise for the first 30 minutes of DA's recording. We were having trouble with Discord, so his voice was getting cut off more frequently. But we sorted it out in the remaining 3 hours, so there you go. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. So it's sort of a foggy afternoon here. It's very, I would like to say, Christmassy. Usually this time of year it's very, very miserable. But this year it's been actually quite festive, quite Christmassy feeling to me. I don't know how it feels down there, DA. I mean, is it quite Christmassy down there?
It's definitely foggy, I'll give you that. I'm looking out my window and I can't see 10 feet in front of my face.
What's that plane heading towards us? I need a light on your roof.
No, the weather forecast for today is literally just fog. That's it. That's the weather forecast for the entirety of today.
Well, it's Christmassy feeling is the point.
Yeah.
I'm joined with me today by one of the, I would describe as the best level artists of his time. Probably up there with Lin Kaki, Rob Joe, Rika Chow. I'm probably butchering these names. But I suppose I would name him as a real-life encyclopedia of Sonic 1 objects. D.A. Garden is here.
Indeed I am.
How are you, D.A.?
I'm good. I am good. I just want to say as well, like, I'm not the first person to said something similar to me in that regard when it comes to level layouts and objects. And I really don't know whether to take that in a good or a bad way, because it's like, I have all this somewhat pointless knowledge in my head. It can't be helpful, but it's.
Well, it's just like the other day when I said to you, I said, what's Object 1F, and you went crab meat. Like, how the hell did you know that? Was it crab meat?
What happens?
Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah.
See, even I know that. Okay. Now, DA, when I first met you, would have to be I think it was about 2007, 2008, that sort of time.
Yes.
You were working on a project with JXT and Malevolence called Sonic 1, or the project was called Sonic 1, but the 1 was the word 1, it was O-N-E.
Yes.
So I'll call it Sonic O-N-E from now on. And JXT mentioned in a comment that I came across, he mentioned that he hired you on because he saw your work on West Side Island. So I'm just sort of getting a chronological order of how things have gone in terms of projects you've worked on. But I want to go back to the beginning, so I want to get a proper order on this one. So first of all, I want to see how you got into the community, but I think we have to go way back. We have to go way back to before you knew anything about Sonic the Hedgehog, you knew anything about the Mega Drive. When did you first come across the Mega Drive and or Sonic the Hedgehog?
Well, first time I saw Sega Mega Drive and Sonic 1 together was when I was, I think, 4 years old, and I went over to my cousin's house, and they were playing Sonic 1 on a Mega Drive. They purchased the Mega Drive secondhand, and I remember that distinctly the word name Faye was written in red marker on the cartridge. I'd obviously never seen the cartridge before, so I thought, what is this game? Funny enough, the first level I saw was Marble Zone, not Green Hill Zone. I saw them slowly working through the 50 hertz version of Sonic 1 in Marble Zone, the slow, methodical platformer. And first time I saw it, I thought, wow, this is actually looks amazing. I want to play this. And obviously, me being 4 years old, it was a case of, no, my cousins were arguing about who gets to play it, and obviously didn't get much of a chance to play it. But yeah, that was my first sort of experience with Sonic.
You say you were 4 years old. I mean, what year was this? Like 93, 94 maybe?
92, 1992.
92. Okay, so I was being polite. Okay, so all right. So when did you when did you actually get the Mega Drive, like yourself?
That's a bit of a different story. So I obviously played Sonic on and off my cousins, Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, growing up a little bit on that sort of age, the age of 4, 5 or 6. I had a very close friend of mine called Becca who let me borrow her Mega Drive.
Oh, that was very kind of her.
Yeah, so sometimes she had a Mega Drive with like 5 or 6 games, and Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and she'd sometimes just be, I asked to play it when I went over her house, and she would just turn around to me sometimes and go, I'm not playing on the Mega Drive this week, you can borrow it.
Oh.
But she'd leave it with me, and I used to play it on a small portable black and white television in the dining room.
Oh, so hang on a minute, so you actually started playing it in black and white?
Yeah, so my first experience with Sonic was colour in my cousins, but playing it myself at my house was on a portable black and white television.
I just got this vision you're playing it and like Sonic the Hedgehog's like dancing like a Mickey Mouse cartoon, like
Oh, I mean, it did the job. I mean, we didn't have I didn't want to. It's difficult to sort of set it up in the living room television.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that disrupted everybody in the family. So my mum said we had a portable black and white television, and if it worked on that, I could play it on that. So yeah, that was like the experience I had. And then it was only until I think it was 1996 actually, where I used to bug my mum a lot, saying I want my own Mega Drive. I don't want to have to keep borrowing Becca's and waiting until she's not playing it, she's not using it. So I remember every time opportunity I had, I said, "Mum, I want a Mega Drive. I want to play Sonic. I want my own Sega." And that culminated in, I think it was August or September of '96. And I just came home from school one day, and my mum gave me this envelope. She said, "This is for you." And I opened the envelope, and it's got like this little cryptic clue in it. I'm reading it. I said, "What is this?" And my mum said, just read it and follow the clue." I'm very confused by this. I don't understand what's going on. So I read the clue, and the clue points me to my bedroom. There's another envelope. So I open it up, and there's another envelope. Another clue.
Oh my god!
I went for about 5 or 6 of these till I went into the back garden shed, and there was one on the floor in the shed. So I picked that up, and it said, "Go to my sister's room." I was like, "This is really weird. I don't understand what's going on." I mean, at the time, I was I was 7, 8.
Open your sister's room, say, "Get out my room!"
But no, I was 7 or 8 years old at the time. I was very confused about what was going on, but a very excited sort of child. So I run into my sister's room, and there's this box that I finally found from the last clue, and it was a really big cardboard box, something in it. And my mum said, "Bring it downstairs to the living room and open it up." I opened it up, and inside was a Sega Mega Drive 2. Mega Games, the 6-volume 3-pack with Sonic 1, Streets of Rage, Revenge of Shinobi. She said, I was just shocked. I couldn't understand. I was like, "Whose is this?" And Mum said, "That's yours." I was like, "What?" She goes, "This is an early Christmas present because I've ordered it from a catalogue. Can't afford to buy it outright, so I'm paying monthly installments on it, but this is yours.
Oh my god!
Take good care of it." So that was it. I plugged it into the living room TV. I was playing it straight away.
Can I just say, your mum is like an absolute saint, just like Father Christmas. Like, oh my god!
Yeah,
that was amazing.
I would never have anything bad to say about my mum. She's always sort of gone above and beyond to ensure that as things were a little bit difficult growing up with financially, but she would always try her best to ensure that I had any and everything I wanted. If I said that I wanted a Mega Drive, she would turn around to me. She's like, "Somehow we would try and get you a Mega Drive if that's the one thing you want."
Yeah.
I remember she said that to me one day, and I was like, I appreciate her just saying that. That to me was like, I really do appreciate that. And actually getting one was just like, I just couldn't believe that it happened.
Yeah.
But that was like my experience with Sonic 1 was just playing that and the hour before school in the morning, I would set it up in the
In
living
black
room.
and white. In black and white.
Oh, that's the thing.
um,
Yeah, I'd play Sonic 1 in the colour TV in my living room. Set it up on there,
ah,
play it there, and then in the evenings I would set it up on the black and white television in the dining room. But in the morning, for the first hour before school, it was like I've got an hour, and Mum isn't watching anything on the TV. I will put it in my living room, play it in colour.
that's amazing.
And it was, I think it was for about a year until Mum finally got another TV for the living room, and then she put the old living room TV in the dining room on the dining room table for me and said, "You can now play it here in colour in the dining room." I think that was the start of '97. It's quite
Yeah.
late, obviously, but to me it meant the world.
I mean, how big was this TV? I mean, presumably it was on the dining room table. I mean, like, presumably you have to
Yeah,
take it off
it
every
was.
time people went for a meal. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, over time our dining room changed from a dining room into like a second bedroom.
okay.
But
Yeah.
over time we didn't really use it for a dining room anymore. It was sort of that was
It's like an office space,
used
I
to keep
suppose, or just
yeah,
a
we
lounge area.
used to keep on
Yeah.
eating meals more and more in the living room, in front of in front of the TV, that generation. So yeah,
Yeah. No, that is absolutely amazing. I mean, of all the stories I've heard of people getting their console, it just that has to be probably one of the most amazing ones. You know, especially when like she couldn't afford it, just like, still found a way. You know, like she sounds like an absolute saint. Having said that, I do know that a few times you've mentioned that you've had some sort of a games library. Like, I think you had a cabinet at one point, and you started collecting this. I mean, I'm assuming that the Mega Drive you had back then is, the games you had back then. Are they the same games you have as part of this library?
oh no,
No. Okay. Well,
the
tell us
reason
about the library. I mean,
I have a Sonic collection. I mean, at the moment, I own a copy of every Sonic game released in the UK, bar one, which is Sonic 2 and 1 for the Sega Game Gear. Every other Sonic game that was released in the PAL UK territory, I have a copy of. That's in its own cabinet, but I've also been that, especially the last couple of years, been buying games for other consoles to the point where I've
yeah.
started running out of room to store them because that's what I do.
Well, when did you start doing this collection? Like, how long ago? Like, when did you decide, okay, I'm going to start collecting this now? Like, did you already have a few and thought, well, I've already started collecting these, so I might as well start collecting more? Or did you say, like, no, I want to collect them all from the very beginning? Like,
It's a bit difficult to explain. I mean, as I was growing up, as I said, we didn't have very much money. So for me, it
Yeah.
was either I treasured the games that I had, or I traded them in against other games, pre-owned shops. I mean, back in the
Mm-hmm.
mid to late '90s, it was easier to find second-hand shops where you could take a video game in against another one. I used to do that quite a lot. I'd take a game in, trade it in against another one. I'd then have another game to play for 3-6 months until I got bored of it, get that in against another one, and so on. My game library growing up wasn't really ever really that big. It was sort of a small amount of games that I managed to keep hold of.
Yeah.
And if you traded in, say, two of your games that you've been playing a lot that you no longer had much interest in playing for another one, that other game you were trading them in against, you had to ensure that you were going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
You were going to play it a lot because otherwise there's no point. So it's one of the reasons why I have a small amount of games on the Sega Mega Drive that I really enjoy because I played them a lot. You know what I mean? For example, I don't say this often, but Sonic games, funnily enough, aren't my favourite game. My favourite game of all time is still Rocket Knight Adventures for the Mega Drive, not a Sonic game.
That's a good choice. It's a very
Yeah.
good choice.
But yeah, some people get surprised by that as well because they're like, "Well, you collect Sonic games?" I'm like, "I do. You're right, and I love Sonic games. My favorite game of all time will always be Rocket Knight Adventures. It's absolutely fantastic."
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I can see why that would be. I totally understand. I mean, do you think it's more of like a nostalgia thing? Or do you genuinely just think, well, it is a really good game? I mean, I know it is a good game, but do you think that maybe nostalgia has a play in that?
Oh, possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't actually own the game growing up. My cousins owned it, and I borrowed it from them
Yeah.
a very small amount of times. I'd lend them a game, and they'd let me borrow their games in return. And that's one of the other ways I managed to play some games for a very limited amount of time. Rocket Knight Adventures being one of them. But I never actually got to sit down and play it fully, start to finish. It was always a very difficult game for me to play. And as a child, I thought it was a game that was fun but too hard. And then as I got a bit older and the game became a bit easier to play and I became more accustomed to it, the fondness for the game sort of grew out of that.
Yeah, your skill grew. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I came to appreciate the game more for what it was and what it was trying to do. And I think that hasn't happened to me with a lot of game franchises. That's doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. I mean, I must confess, I mean, even now, when I go to play in Rocket Knight Adventure, I still, when I get to, like, the last boss of it, it's got is it just me, or has it got loads of, like, final bosses towards the end?
Yeah, I mean, the
For
game
the
is
game.
very boss centric. Like, you have
Yeah.
small amounts of platforming followed by a boss, followed by another small section of platforming, followed by a boss. I think that the game knew that was its structure, like from the start. I mean, play the happy opening green level, you're approached by the camera locking and these driving vehicles already that take more than one hit, and you're like, these are like sub bosses already. I haven't even like finished the level that I'm in.
Yeah.
That that sort of sets the tone already. I feel like, and by the time you get to a tank that takes tons of hits, at the end of that section, you're like, this is already a full level boss. I've barely played what I feel like is one act of the game yet.
Well, it's like you get to the end, and I remember playing it. I had to use quite a lot of save states because I'm still not sort of skilled at the thing. But I remember going through all these bosses, and I think I got to the last boss, defeated it, and then there was the ending part, which at first I thought was like an ending sequence. You're in the ship flying down to the planet, down to Earth or whatever. And that's a boss fight too. I'm like, God, let it end.
Yeah,
Just,
it's like an interactive cutscene. Yeah, I always thought that was clever because that's on one of the harder difficulty levels. Like if you play on the easy or normal difficulty mode, that's not there. It's sort of like an extra thing that's
ah,
you're playing on a hard difficulty. You're playing towards actual true ending of the game. I feel like that was just sort of like a last thing that they added in there, sort of for that difficulty in. But I think it works really well, like it because you play on
yeah,
the easier difficulties, you get like a small text thing that says like, "Oh, you completed the game now, trying a harder difficulty."
yeah,
You don't get closure or conclusion to the story in that way.
yeah.
It's sort of pushing you just to try and get that little bit better at the game, and that's what I did when I played.
Replay value.
Yeah,
Like God, yeah. No, that's a really really good choice for a most favorite game. Um, but I mean, just to go back to your library for a moment. So
yeah, sure. That's. I was going to say like, should we go back to the main question apart from me derailing?
no, I just because like I mean, how long has this library taken you so far? I mean, when did you start it?
So I only started it when I was, I think, about a year or so before I decided to go back to college. Fun enough, I was 22 at the time. That would be 11 years ago. That's the only time I really started collecting games because before then I didn't really. Again, I had a few, but I didn't have many. If I remember very clearly, I had a GameCube at the time that I was playing quite a bit, but I didn't have like a loads of games for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I had a Nintendo Wii that I got for one of those Christmases. It was like at least a year or so after it came out. I started collecting games for the Nintendo Wii because I was like, well, I quite like the console. I'm enjoying it. So
Yeah.
I just sort of started buying games for the Nintendo Wii. And then I started selling most of those Wii games because I bought a DS and I wanted the money at the time because
You're still
that's
trading all these years, and you're
yeah,
still
yeah,
trading.
still trading. Yeah, still trading. But then that was it. Like the last console that I've ever really done that for was to the DS and 3DS. Even though I started doing it then, it was a case of I started then buying those Sonic games at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I had all the ones for the GameCube, and then I started getting the ones for the Wii because I was playing them. And then it was just a case of, okay, you know what? I want to go back and get all the other ones.
Uh huh.
I have a working Mega Drive somewhere. I can still play them. So I'm going to get them on the Mega Drive. So I started going back and getting Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3,
Yeah.
just picking them up when I could. And then it was at that point I looked at my collection and realised, hang on a minute, I've got a lot of these. Surely there can't be too much more. That was my being a bit naive, I'm being honest. So
Then you find out
I
about the Game Gear
yeah,
collection.
I started buying some of the more obscure games. So I thought I'd start buying Sonic 1 for the Master System, Sonic 2 for the Master System, Sonic Chaos for the Master System. And then I at that point, and I started going back to college. I had, I'd say 70 to 80% of Sonic games at that point. Like none of the rare ones, but it was a case of I also didn't have multiple copies of the same game for different consoles. I only had like the Wii version of a certain game, and if it was on PS2 and Xbox or whatever, I just ignored them. I was like, I don't care about that. But it was only at that point I started looking at how many games I had, and I thought, I still want to collect Sonic games because part of me loves collecting anyway, and no matter what it is. I was like, actually, I'm going to get this game, but on Xbox as well, and the PS2 version, and GameCube version of say Shadow the Hedgehog, and I've got all three copies for different consoles. And then,
Are there any sort of sorry, I don't mean to cut. Are there any sort of differences between different copies? Like the PlayStation version has this, and the GameCube version has this. Like, for example, I know for a fact Sonic Mega Collection, the menus are different on the GameCube version than they are the PlayStation 2 version.
yeah,
Do you get any sort of like discrepancies like that on many of them? Because I've not played many of these games on the more modern.
most of them don't. Most of them are pretty much the same game. It was just a case of I wanted a more complete collection. In my head, it was just a case of,
Okay.
okay, what's more complete than saying I own one copy of Sonic Heroes? Well, how about if I own Sonic Heroes on every platform?
There's no arguments. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you owned
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
Nobody can't say you didn't.
this is the thing. Yeah, so I distinctly remember one of the bigger games that I was trying to get for my collection back then was stuff like Knuckles Chaotix. And I was looking at eBay at the time, and I was like, "Oh, I don't have." At the time, it was only selling for £120 to £150, but that's
Yes,
still a lot of
yes.
money. That sort of game. I was like, I don't really have that money because
Especially if it's a boxed copy.
I mean, I'm in college. I've got very little money coming in. I'm not employed. What do I do?
Hmm.
So I remember finding a copy for £80 on eBay, and I was like, "This can't be real. This box is £80. It's enough condition. It's not greatest condition."
Yeah. Well, what's the catch?
So I had a word with my sister, and she said to me, "I'll buy it for you as long as you pay me the money back." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh, bless
Yeah.
her.
So she helped me get a copy of Knuckles Chaotix. I'm always grateful to her for doing that. So that when I had that, that was like one of the big games for my collection, one of the ones that was rare and worth some money. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's quite an accomplishment to have managed to acquire that. I'm going to treasure that as part of my collection. So I then started looking at picking up some of the other ones that I was missing. So some of the weirder Game Gear games like Triple Trouble and Mega CD and Sonic CD for the Mega CD rather.
Yeah.
Sort of just slowly building it up from there. That happened as I was going through college, as I was going through university, until the point where, about 5 or 6 years later, when I was been out of university for about a year, I had about 99% of the games that I have in my collection now. So at that point, the only main thing I was missing was Sonic Blast for the Game Gear, one of the big games that, as anybody who collects knows, that game is worth a lot of money.
Oh, I know that. I mean, you mentioned like the different sort of versions for different hardware, but I mean, what about the PC versions? Like not just like Sonic CD and Sonic and Knuckles collection.
It's a grey area. My definition of my collection has changed over time. So originally it was just I own a copy of every Sonic game, but then that's like been condensed a bit to is I own a copy of every Sonic game released in the PAL region in the UK. But then it's changed to 2 video game consoles because otherwise they're trying to find 9, 10, 11 different versions of say Sonic R for the PC, and at that point there's no point. They're all just that's sort of too difficult to start tracking these down.
Yes,
they're really they're very inexpensive and they're no different from each other.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean with the PC. I think like Sonic 3D and Sonic R have probably been released multiple times for PC. The copy I got for 99p. I mean, that's the value of these games now.
I mean, I remember back in the day, you could walk into Poundland and buy copies of them for the PC, the Explosive Collection boxes.
Explosive, that was it, yeah.
And they were just £1 in there, you could buy them. And that happened, I didn't buy them at the time because I wasn't collecting them, but I remember seeing them thinking, yeah, if I was to ever start buying them, I could find them very easily, so there was no point sort of buying them.
With regards to the PC versions, it's like Sonic CD and Sonic and Knuckles collection. Did you want my PC versions? Like, I mean, do you have them?
I have the big box PC versions of them.
You got them? Oh, okay. All right, never mind then.
That's the only. I only have the original big box copies of those PC games because they're in a big box. So to me, it's like they're slightly different. The original releases in a big box, as with the manual and then a dual case inside. And
I've got the Sonic and Knuckles collection big box, But the PC version, I've only got the CD case, so I think the box clearly was missing when I got it from the car boot, I think. But yeah, okay, if you've already got them, then yeah, I can't help. Sorry.
Yeah, that's where I found my big box Sonic CD at a car boot sale, and somebody's had it on there for $5, and I was like,
Sold.
I said, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Well, it's an old PC game. I don't care about it." I was like,
Okay.
"You don't understand. Like, it's worth more than that, but I'm not going to say anything else further and just give you the money."
Shut
and
up
take
and
it.
pay for it, DA.
Yeah, I really should have done. But that's not me, though. I would have rather. I was that person who immediately goes, "Well, hang on a minute. I don't think that's quite right."
I'll give you £6 for it. You know. Yeah, I get it. Your conscience gets the better of you.
Yeah.
So, with that argument in place, then with your library, I would assume that you've played every single Sonic game.
I'd say
at least.
It depends what your definition of a game is, really. There's a couple I haven't played, like Tales.
Excluding
Maker,
excluding arcade exclusive.
Yeah, I haven't played Tales in the Music Maker. That's on the Sega Pico, but that wasn't released in the UK.
Okay, well, that doesn't count.
Yeah, and Sonic Schoolhouse I haven't played, but I've seen a video of it. The rest of them, yes, I've definitely played at some point. I've definitely played at least once, maybe even more, yeah.
Then I can safely ask you this question. In your own opinion, what is the best Sonic game you've played? What's your favourite? I have to ask this question. I'm sorry.
Oh,
it has to
fine.
be done.
I don't know whether it's cheating or not, but Sonic 3 and Knuckles?
Okay, no, that's fine. I can accept that. Yeah.
It's technically 2 games, but yeah, that's a difficult one.
It was meant to
yeah,
be one, so I'll let it pass.
Yeah. The thing is as well, it's a really difficult call because especially with like the Mega Drive era, you've got like Sonic 2, which spent more hours than I can count playing that game back to back. Sonic CD was very obscure. I didn't get very much of a chance to play it growing up until later, but I have like a fondness for it because I didn't get to play it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't get to play it back then, so when I play it now, I'm like...
It's just this mysterious relic, you know, he's like, ooh. Yeah.
It's more Sonic 1 than Sonic 2, you know, it's a very strange game.
Yes.
Reflection. But yeah, I think of my favourite Sonic game is probably Sonic 3 and Knuckles, just for the sheer, like, length of the game, it's just how much bigger and expansive everything is. You have, like, the shield abilities give you abilities, but they're like still a simple control method, just button. The blue sphere stages are absolutely awful to get used to at the start, but as soon as you start mastering how the control works and you can buffer inputs and stuff like that, they just feel like second nature to play them. Things like that. And then you come back to the game. It's not even about the difficulty being up there. I mean, it's a bit hard to explain, but it's like with Sonic 2 special stages, I'm only good at them now because I know where all the rings are by like pure memorization.
Yes.
Sonic 3 and Knuckles Blue Sphere stages, I still know the layout, but that doesn't change the fact that I still have to play the stage. That's the thing. There's a big difference there, and I think they did a really good job of that. I just loved the spectacle as well of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It takes Sonic 2 and just sort of blows it up to a huge level. Still the same core gameplay, and actually on that point as well, like I remember a lot of people back in the day were saying like game sequels they were expecting something big and different, and for example when Golden Axe 2 came out, people complained and said, "Oh, it's too much like Golden Axe 1. It's just more of the same thing but with a new fresh coat of paint and new music." And I was just in my head, I'm like, what's wrong with that? If something works and the formula is that well established, what's wrong with just giving me more of the same? But what's wrong with that? And to me, it's baffling that people even thought that. When it came to Sonic 3 Knuckles, it was, again, more of the same, but in such a bigger level of the amount of levels you play in the game, and the music is just crazy, and it's just some of the visual...
It was an adventure.
Yeah, and that's the thing that Sonic 3 Knuckles does really well. It somehow portrays a story through its gameplay without words, without text. It's just the character's emotions through the sprites, which I think is really clever.
Yeah, when you see like Knuckles come out of that pillar and he's looking left and right, instantly, even a 4-year-old can see, he's hiding something.
Exactly. That's the thing. You know what's happening just by the actions on screen. You're not told it. You'd have to read it.
You're 4 years old. He jumps on the switch like, wow, what an arsehole. He's an arsehole.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know immediately he's the bad guy. He's doing something to stop you. Like, you don't need to be told he's the bad guy. You don't need to have text saying, "Oh no, it's Knuckles the bad guy." You know that he's the bad guy at this point. That's exactly it.
But the great thing about that is, it breaks through languages. You can play that to anyone of any language, and they'll pick that up.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing as well. Sonic 3 was released in the world in different regions, different languages, but the ROM is almost identical. Because there's no need to have language differences for the game. It's just the same game. There's nothing that is really region dependent.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll take a little bit of a break. For the meantime, we're going to play some music. I got some music by Project FM called Icescape. by Project FM for Sonic the Hedgehog Isle of Magnetic Artifacts, or Shimmer for short. It's a Japanese-inspired overhaul of Sonic 1, a project to anticipate sometime soon. Now, I mean, the intro was it was a little bit slow, but no, I thought it picked up quite well towards the middle and had a pretty good ending.
Yeah, the intro, like I agree with you. It's a little bit slow, but I think when you have a title card shop, in the level at the start of the level, and that slow introduction to the level, it would fit rather well. So then, when the beat starts to kick in, you then start to get more of a feel for the level as you start playing. Yeah.
So we've just spoken about your games collection, and we've just had your favourite game. I wanted to get more into the hacking scene side of things now.
Okay.
So first of all, how did you come across the hacking scene? Like, what led you to it? What were you searching for that led you to it?
Okay, so I was at school when I was about the age of 15, and I was given access to computers at lunchtime. They were like, you can use the computers for your lunch break, your break time.
For study, of course.
Oh yeah, for study. Well, the thing is,
you know,
they said that, but also they said if you want to do your own sort of thing on them, you're allowed because there's filters on them and stuff, which was rather nice of them. So I started looking into obviously Sonic, Sonic games, and things like that, and I stumbled across what was originally called Simon Y's Sonic 2 beta site.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that takes me back.
Yeah, so I started looking at the screenshots of like Hidden Palace Zone in Sonic 2, and immediately get intrigued by this. I'm more like, okay, I don't recall ever seeing these images before, but this level this is a level that I've never played before, and I'm intrigued by this. So I just sort of going through the timeline that they started putting together on the site back then, and sort of taking the images in, sort of getting an idea in my head of how it might play out. And I was like, okay, so, this is really cool. Where did these images come from?
Yeah.
So obviously there's a download for the ROM. Here's the prototype Sonic 2 beta.
I mean,
at the time.
just to come in there. When you see got like the Hidden Palace Zone, and you see the title card clearly says Hidden Palace. You don't think, oh, this was a beta. You think, wow, is this a secret level that was hidden all along?
Yeah.
It's a very sort of distracting kind of level name.
And the thing is, as well, I'm there thinking maybe there's something in Sonic 2 I haven't done correctly to fully 100% it. Is there something that I've missed?
Yeah.
So I go back and play Sonic 2 quite a bit more at that point. Go home from school, I'm playing Sonic 2 again. I'm trying to find out how to access Hidden Palace, but I've obviously not done as much research as I could have done. So.
And I bet you heard the sound track number 10 in the sound test, and it sort of got you to want to try and complete it 100% even more, surely.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm constantly playing the special stages over and over again, getting all the Chaos Emeralds as early as I can, seeing if there's something I've missed that is stopping me from getting access to Hidden Palace Zone. So I'm looking into this more and more, and obviously, like I said, I found the ROM, but I didn't know what a ROM was. So I was like, okay, how do I play this ROM? How do I see this for myself?
Put it on the cartridge.
The ROM file. It's called like, I think it's called like Sonic 2. I think it's even called like Sonic 2 beta.bin or .gen. I can't remember which one back then. But I was looking at it like, I don't understand what to do with this file. So I started doing some Google searching, find out you can run it in an emulator. Like, what's an emulator? Oh, hang on, you can emulate the Sega Mega Drive on a PC. So I'm looking around and I think it was Gen's 2.11b was the first one I properly used, which is very old now.
Wow.
So I download this emulator and I put the ROM in it, I drag it onto the emulator and it starts playing, but I couldn't figure out the controls, and I figured out to set the control up to the keyboard, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I can actually start playing this on the keyboard. That's different. I've never played a Mega Drive game on a keyboard before.
I mean, presumably you weren't standing there with your Mega Drive 2 control, your Mega Drive controller, trying to plug it into your PC somehow. Like, well, it doesn't fit in the VGA port.
That's the thing. I wasn't doing that, but it was just intrigued. I was like, how do I even play it though? And then obviously when I realised you could use the keyboard controls and you could map them to buttons, it made sense. So I started playing obviously Sonic 2 beta. And I played it a lot, and I was just intrigued with Hidden Palace with the changes in the level layouts to the other levels. So it's like load up Emerald Hill, and I'm like, this bad thing's in a different place. the springs moved, these spikes have slightly adjusted. And in my head, that's like, well, why? The first question is, why are they different to the final version? In my head, it starts this little thing where I'm just like, okay, it's clearly different because a change had to be made or was made for a specific reason, usually to make the game flow better, and that began my interest in, okay, there's still problems in the final game that I would love to resolve at some point. That's the first thought that I had. I was like, is there any way you could do that? Like, I was like, I don't think it's possible, but it would be amazing if I could just take a version of Sonic 1 or 2 and I could edit a few things, and then, oh, look, I now can make it a little bit more refined, a bit easier. I could, and, I was like, is there any way I can do that? And the other thing that I kept thinking about it as well was in Knuckles in Sonic 2, when you lock Sonic 2 onto Sonic and Knuckles, you finish a special stage, but when you come back to the level, you still have the same rings you had before.
That's right. Yes, you do. Yes,
and that in the original fundamentally changes how you can get the Chaos Emeralds so quickly, because you don't have to go around the level collecting all 50 rings again. You can just literally get from one star post to the next, knowing you have enough for the emeralds. So that's the only way that game felt easier, because obviously the last boss with Knuckles' lower jump height is just an absolute mess. But let's not get onto that. But,
I will say, for the record, another reason might be because I didn't know this before, but I found that I was able to complete the special stages as Sonic alone better than with Tails, and I just assumed because Tails kept losing the damn rings, but it turns out the coin requirement... Oh my god! The ring requirements were higher when you have both players. So, was Knuckles lower?
It was indeed lower. It was even lower than Sonic alone, yes. There's a completely different ring requirement table. If I remember correctly, on Special Stage 7, the last one, the first section of the special stage has only 50 ring requirement, not 100. That's such a difference.
That 50%, man. Holy crap.
You're making the game, you're making that section 50% easier. And obviously, then the section 2, I think, is like 100 rings as opposed to 190. So again, you're making that last special stage that much easier.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first times I managed to get all of the Chaos Emeralds, was Knuckles in Sonic 2.
But, knowing that, with all these sort of changes, say, there's this difference between the games, and including this beta one. You were saying that whether or not there's the probability that you would be able to modify this even further. When did you get to the realization that, so I can do that?
Well, that's the thing. I was obviously looking on Simon Wise Sonic 2 Beta, which then became Sonic 2 Beta. But the forums I was interested in as well, because people were discussing these things. So the forums, people are discussing. And then there's a section where people are then saying, check out this ROM hack. I'm like, what's a ROM hack? Okay, what are you talking about?
Here we go.
What's a ROM hack? Have a look into it. Wait, you've modified the Sonic... How have you done this? So my brain is just like worrying, going, whoa, people are modifying the original games? That sounds like impossible to me. Like, how would you even
black magic?
That? Yeah. So I started looking into it more, and I'm like, well, I don't want to get involved with code, because the first thing I saw was people saying, here's how you can edit this in Hex. I was like, whoa, no, I don't want to do any of this. This looks horrific. I want to stay as far away from this as possible. I'm not interested in...
Scary.
I'm not interested in the code. I'm not interested in Hex editing. But I am interested in the level layouts and being able to make changes to them, to make them better, to make them streamlined, to make them different, Mm-hmm. And I can see some of these projects have already done this. And I was looking into how they've done that, and I was like, oh, okay, so there's a tool called Ezrail Sonic Editor, ESE. I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So how does this work? You load in a save state from a ROM, and then you can edit stuff, and then you can save it, and then you can technically play it. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And they've somehow put that into the game. Well, I don't really care whether you can do that or not, but if you can make these changes and then play them back, that's enough for me to be interested in looking into how this works. Yeah. So I did. I started messing around with the SE2 and, editing save states, and then being able to play a level from that edited save state in such a way that, okay, this is definitely custom, and I've changed this monitor, and I've changed, taken this bridge out and put a platform there, or the small things.
Well, can I just sort of ask, did you start with ESE?
ESE, I looked at ESE very briefly. It was enough for me to understand how it worked, but I thought it was too finicky, and I was like, I don't really want to do like at anything big with this because it just seems overly complicated for what it's trying to achieve. I know there was another tool called Sonic One. It was an object editor. I can't remember what it was called. I think it might be like SOME or something. I think that's music, isn't it?
Yeah,
There was an
a Sonic One
yeah,
music editor. Yeah, yeah.
not that, but there was another tool that was like that. That was literally
I know. I think Hivebrain. He had what was it? Hivebrain's hacking studio. I think it was. Didn't
yeah.
he?
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just more looking into the tools at the time. Like, is there anything like that's like ESE2 but better?
Yeah.
And then obviously, then that spurred me to look, and I found ESE2, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect! It just loads in a ROM, and you can save to the ROM."
Yeah.
And as soon as I realised you could do this, I was like, "Okay, what's
What's the catch?
the limitation? Yeah, what's the limitations of this?" So the first thing I did obviously was just open up Sonic One, open up Green Hill Zone, and I was like, "Okay, no, no, I'm actually wrong." The first thing I did was open Sonic 2, and the first thing it does is it tries to tell you that it needs to extend the data to the end of the ROM, which I got really worried about. So I was like, "What does that even mean?"
Yeah. Very vague.
So yeah, it doesn't explain fully what it's doing. So I was like, I don't want to mess with Sonic 2. I don't want to mess with this. This looks too complicated. I'm not
But
gonna
hang on a
bother.
minute. Hang on. Isn't that Sonic One? You can't change like the size of the objects. You fix, aren't you?
You can. Yeah, you can change the ID and sub ID of any object.
No, I mean the number of total objects.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh,
That's
okay.
one of the restrictions of ESE2.
Yeah.
So the way I'm led to believe that ESE2 works, it edits stuff internally in the ROM that wouldn't adjust the ROM size. That's
Yeah.
how I believe it works.
Yeah.
So you can change object IDs and you can change their positioning, but that doesn't change the ROM size. It just changes bytes that were already there.
Now, I remembered
So
you
obviously,
mentioning, because I remember you mentioning this. It must have been probably a fair number of years ago that you told me this. That what you would do is you wouldn't use all of the objects. You'd have some, but you just like put them in like the corner of the level. You'd put them out the way where nobody would ever see them because you can't delete objects.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually what I did. So when I started using ESE2 a bit more, understanding like what you could do with it, first thing I did was I keep the start of the level platform, like the first chunk or two, keep the last two where the signpost was, because at the time I thought that's the limitation of what I'm working with. The start of the level and the end of the level, they're stuck. You know, I can't edit those right now because that means I have to get involved with code. I'm not doing that. But I can edit everything in between as long as I stick to the original camera adjustments. So obviously the camera moves up and down in predefined positions due to code. And I was like, as long as I stick within those camera boundaries, then I can technically make my own layout here. So most of the layout I just cleared out. And then I put I moved some of the existing objects in places roughly to indicate where the camera would be. But the rest of them I just then made object 00 or moved them so far out of the way that I knew that they were just like basically a huge box full of objects, and I could just then drag them all back up into where I needed them and adjust their IDs accordingly.
Yeah.
So this is what I did. And originally, the first thing I did was obviously just work on Green Hill Zone 1, and I made funnily enough, a layout that no longer exists anywhere. It's on a project that was never going to go anywhere, but it was just me understanding how it all worked and put it all together.
Yeah.
And I got really happy with the way that worked, and understanding the limitations of working within like the existing chunks, the existing camera, the existing objects that are available to you. That was interesting in the regard that when I started trying to be a bit more elaborate with the layouting, I was like, I'm running out of objects because there's not enough here. Like I haven't got enough to do what I need to do, so I have to then simplify the layout.
Be a bit more strategic about it.
Yeah. So I have these limitations, and I started getting so used to those limitations, but that then spurred me to continue making other layouts. So I made Green Hill Zone 1, Green Hill Zone 2, Green Hill Zone 3. And at that point, I'm like, well, I've got an entire zone of layouts that have been edited. What do I do with that? I can show it to people, they can play it, but obviously the rest of the ROM's still the same. So at that point, I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to try this again from scratch. But the idea is maybe I start with another level, not Green Hill Zone. I try and get used to, say, Marble Zone or Spring Yard Zone, and then go back and do Green Hill Zone later, because that's sort of like the way that I develop things. I don't most of the time I don't usually go from point A to point B straight away in a straight line. I will start at point A, then I jump halfway through the line and then work on something else entirely different. And that's kind of how my development works in my head. It's sort of like I'm going to work on Labyrinth Zone for the next 2 weeks, and get it all done, and then go back and do Marble Zone later, for example. So that's what I was just doing, just editing random levels, getting more of a feel for how the levels were structured, how the objects were used.
Yeah, and I mean, with Labyrinth Zone in particular, I mean, you said about, you used objects to mark off where the resizing of the screen boundaries are. Yeah. I mean, I would assume you did the same with the Labyrinth Zone water heights.
Yeah. I use springs for it most of the time. So you'd have like a red, 2 or 3 red springs in a line next to each other, indicate it goes up here, or I'd have like yellow springs pointing down to indicate it goes down there. And I'd use it as a guide, as I'm like, okay, so it goes up here, goes down here, and sort of like, I don't want to put a chunk here because obviously but then you could just jump and cause the water levels to go up and down because you're there. So constantly working within that restriction. But that's what I did. I said randomly worked on random zones, and it wasn't like I was ever always working towards a project either.
But I would have thought Act 3 of Labyrinth would have been a real pain with the never-ending loop and the water level. There's like a conflict there, isn't there?
There is, which is why if you know anything about Sonic West Side Island, you'll realise that there is no Labyrinth Zone 3. Yeah, there is no. Yeah, there you go. There is no Labyrinth Zone 3.
It makes total sense now.
Yeah, but yeah, there is no Labyrinth Zone 3 in that hack for that reason. I could not get it to do what I wanted it to do.
So at the moment, the project you're working on, I mean, when you're practicing editing the levels with VSE, is what would become West Side Island. I mean, did you decide on a name then, or?
No, that's the thing. It was only when I got to when I realised I had Labyrinth Zone Act 1 and Act 2 done, and I had...
No, Act 3.
Yeah. I started it, and there is still a start to it actually in the ROM still. If you access it, you can look at it as a start to it.
Ah.
There's not much there. It's just me putting the chunks down where I thought they would work, and then realising that it was never going to work like that. But so I had that done, and I had some of Spring Yard done. I had some of Marble Zone done. I didn't have any of Starlight Zone done, and I didn't have any of Scrap Brain or Green Hill Zone done. But at that point, I thought I've got like half of a project here.
Yeah.
And and it was more like I had no idea what the name would be. I didn't really think of a name. It was just like I want Sonic 1 but different. A different experience.
Yeah.
So I just carried on working on it, like editing this level here, this level there. And at the time, I didn't really have access to like my own computer. I had a laptop that I worked on it at the start, which died, and then I remember going over an old friend's house a lot to use his computer to work on it.
How did you get like the data from one computer to another? Because I mean, if I remember rightly, memory sticks, they weren't. I mean, they were around, but they weren't super popular. I mean, were you writing into like disc or MP3 player, or?
I think it was. I had an 8 megabyte flash drive that the school gave me.
That's good for one ROM.
Yeah, 8 megabytes. So in that 8 megabyte flash drive, I could fit a copy of ESE2, a copy of Gens, and my ROM that I was editing directly. Didn't have any backups. So if anything went wrong, the whole project was done for. But back then, I didn't really understand what a backup was. It was more just a case of, oh, it's fine. I'm just editing it. If anything goes wrong, I just undo it. It's fine.
This is going to end well.
But the thing is, it did though. It ended in the project that it was released, which was
lucky sod.
Yeah. I mean, there was many times when I'd edit an object and put the wrong sub ID on it, and things would crash. And I was like, what if I edited to cause it to crash? And I have to go back and find it, and it would sometimes take me hours to go click every object that showed up as a question mark in ESE2 and not know what it did, or me experimenting and using sub IDs that weren't documented. Or used in the original game and seeing whether they worked and what they did. And that was something...
Could we have some of the hits? Like, are there any sort of objects that you can think of off the top of your head that have a certain idea? Like, one that comes to mind is the swinging platform. Like, I think there's an ID that turns it into a checkered ball.
Yes.
That's one example.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
Any others?
There's a lot of moving platforms that work like that. So, for example, in Spring Yard Zone, you've obviously got the big blocks that are 4x4 and they move up and down in those weird patterns, don't they? Like sort of like elevators.
Yeah. Like a staircase.
There's versions of those that are 2x1 for example, that they're unused. They're just 2 blocks wide, 1 block high, and they're unused.
Yeah.
But I use those. There's even the individual 1 by 1 blocks that also move in the same pattern. So I believe that they basically had all this movement code, and then it was like based on what sub ID it is in units of 10 is depending on what version of the block loads. Didn't but so you can use the same, you can use different blocks in different sizes, but still use the same movement code depending on what sub ID you set it as. So I started experimenting
Yeah.
with that.
I'm kind of not. I'm kind of not surprised by that. The Sonic games have a subroutine which has an oscillation, a subroutine which controls. It's not really sine waves, but it creates a sine wave, if you will, without using the sine wave table, and obviously lots of objects will use it so that all platforms are in sync throughout the level. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me, but the different size of the elevator shaft platforms, that's surprising.
Yeah, there's you could, for example,
Why didn't they use them?
it's a good point. I mean, I speculate in my head sometimes that maybe they made a bunch of different movements, then they made the platforms afterwards, like the different sizes, but just said, well, this is a different size platform, but it's still a platform, and we might want to use it for this purpose, so we'll make it work first, and then base the layout around that. So it's just speculation on
Give
my
you
part.
a universal,
Yeah,
like give you a universal list of things you can use. They only used it for these certain parts, and the rest is just history.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
There's, for example, there's that big moving block in Spring Yard Zone 3 that just only moves to the right to a certain point and then stops. There's only one of them, isn't there? That's hit triggered by switch. Now that block you can literally use with all the other movement types. You can have it stationary, move slightly up, slightly down, move horizontally, and it's like, oh, so you can literally use that block as a platform if you wanted. I mean, that was one of the weirdest things I remember trying. I was like, oh, this actually works. It's not crashing. Maybe because it's loads of the graphics for the right, sub ID in units of 10. And then whatever the end bit of that is, like, so for example, say it's 20, like 21, that'll move up and down. 22, move left and right. But they're still using that block art as opposed to the other one that you usually see. And the fact they allowed you to do that means you could be a bit creative. And people are like, oh, you've got new objects here. Well, actually, you haven't. You've just got existing objects that were never used.
Yeah. I mean, okay, for example, the Act 3 boss, you got those blocks. I mean, have you ever used them in the stage? I mean, I'm assuming that the graphics for them is part of the stage itself. I don't know. I never bothered checking.
Do you mean the Spring Yard Zone boss blocks?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not in the level layout, no. I think they're loaded with the actual boss object.
Okay, all right, never mind then.
Yeah, I mean, if I went through the code, you could probably find where they're loaded, but I wouldn't be surprised if those graphics aren't loaded until you get to the area where the boss is. But if I did a bit more investigation, I wouldn't be surprised if they are just objects you could place somewhere.
Nah. On subject of making this hack that eventually would become West Side Island. When did you actually join the community? Well, I mean, okay, for example, the name DA Garden. Why did you choose that? I mean, obviously, we know it's from the DA Garden from Sonic CD, but why did you choose that name? And when did you actually join the community?
Okay, so
did you join YouTube first, or?
Oh, that's the thing. I joined YouTube under the name of Sonic Hedgehog. Very unoriginal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And I joined the forums under the name of Sonic Hedgehog, and I also joined Discord, not Discord, IRC under the name
Discord.
of Sonic Hedgehog.
How long ago was this?
Yes, that's IRC back in the day under the name Sonic
IRC,
Hedgehog.
that's right.
So that was my name.
Okay.
Very unoriginal, and I thought it wasn't too bad. But the name DA Garden wasn't used for anything at that point. It was just... It wasn't even a thing that was on my radar. It was more a case of I joined as Sonic Hedgehog in 2008, I believe. And the project was nearly finished, so I decided I wanted to release it because I'd seen other people do releases on the forums. I wanted to release my project too. So I joined the forums, and then I was talking to some people on IRC, and I said, I want to release the project. How do I do this? And they're like, oh, okay, well, if you take some screenshots, make sure everything's finished, make sure you got the ROM available, upload the ROM somewhere, and then you can,
File den or
Back
Mediafire
then,
or
I think
whatever
it was
was back then.
FileDen. Yeah, back then I think it was
Yeah,
FileDen we used. We don't really use FileDen anymore, but
yeah.
yeah.
That I don't. Does it even exist
I
anymore?
don't
I
know, but
don't
I
know.
remember putting a lot of ROMs and prototypes and other things like that on FileDen back in the day. It's just an easy way
Yeah,
to upload a file and then you get a link to it and you can put that link anywhere.
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, so it was 2008, and I literally had uploaded the ROM to the forums, and I put some images up, and I released the project, and I was on IRC at the same time as I'd released it, and
Hmm.
I believe it was Tweaker, who was one of the
Of course, it was
admins
Tweaker.
at the time, who said to me, he
Yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah,
oh, he goes, you've not joined the forums for very long, but I've seen that you've got this project up. It's really cool.
yeah.
However, your username, it's a bit too similar to other usernames, and it kind of breaks one of our rules where you can't have your name based on Sonic.
Ah, okay. Because I was going to ask about this. Like, how did you change your name? Because you can't
Yeah,
change your
I
name
didn't
on the
know.
forums.
No, so
The admins would have to do it. So
so
I
I
thought you
no, no,
asked.
no. That's the thing. So I was like, well, I don't know what to
Ah,
change it to. I was like, I don't have any other usernames right now. I don't really talk to people online apart from mostly on MSN messages to other people, but that was my real name. So I was like, okay, I'll go find a username. I was like, give me 10 minutes, I'll find a username. He's like, okay, if you can come up with a username that you want to use from now on in 10 minutes, then I'll
and
do it.
and what you did, right? What you looked at you looked at you when you went, da garden, da garden.
No,
Da Garden was born.
well, the thing is, I was trying to find a name that had a reference to me and my actual real name, but at the same time was
Yeah,
something related to Sonic. I was
yeah,
like, anything that sort of ties back to me somehow. So I know anybody who knows me in real life knows that's my username. But at the same time, people online who don't know me in real life wouldn't know. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I was looking, and literally, I was just like, okay, Sonic CD, anything to do with Sonic CD. Originally, I was looking at some of the bad nicknames, but they were Japanese. I was like, well, that's a bit weird and doesn't really tie to me. And then literally, as I was about to close the page, I see the DA Garden mentioned at the bottom, and I was like, hang on, my first and middle names start with the letter D and the letter A. So it looks like my initials, apart from obviously the last letter of my surname isn't there, but it's
Really?
Garden.
Is that true? I never knew this.
Yeah, so DA is my first and middle name. So the letter D, the letter A is my first name, my middle name. So I was like, oh, that's really close. I think I'm going to go with that. And I was just like, okay, Tweaker, what about DA Garden? And he said, that's new. I've never heard of. Yeah, that's quite a unique username. I was like, yeah. I was like, well, I could use the little planet as my profile icon from now on. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, if you're
Sold.
sure,
Yeah.
we'll change your name to that. I was like, please do. So within a couple of minutes, he changed it on the forums. That was it. I
Okay.
changed on the forums. I was now DA Garden. I updated my username on IRC that day as well. And
Did you have a preference on? Sorry, I don't mean to
right,
interrupt. I've really got to ask this, or I'm going to forget. They're like, okay, you got the dots, and there's
yes.
like a space after the first dot, but before the G. Did you have a say in that, or did he just
Oh
type
no,
it the way he thought?
that's how it's typed in Sonic CD.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's accurate
Yeah,
then.
I think the dot is supposed to be like an abbreviation. So I believe originally DA Garden is supposed to stand for Digital Audio Garden.
Yes, yes, it is the CDDA.
To me, as initials, it also makes sense that initials D dot A dot. There's a letter missing, but that's not even mentioned the letter. But that's my initials. So yeah, that's to me. That's the preference. I don't mind if people like write it another way. It's not a problem because it's clearly me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen like, for example, Overlord will happily write it DA underscore garden or DA
I
space
was
garden.
gonna say underscore.
Yeah, that's the thing. The reason being for that though is mostly websites don't like the fact that I've got dots and a space in my username. They don't like it.
Yes, yes, they don't.
But yeah,
Especially the
the
space.
space is a problem. For example, on Twitter, I have to have the username. Annoyingly, my Twitter handle is DAGarden underscore retro because I can't have anything close to the actual name because
Yeah,
it's used by other people. So
bastards.
yeah, but no, that's the thing. When that name change started happening, I was just like, in my head, I was like, "That's me. I'm now DA Garden. I now have a name. I now have An identity,
And it
an
is
identity
unique.
online. It's unique. It's not going to be used by
Yeah.
anybody else. So
No, nobody. I don't know. If somebody says DA Garden, I say, well, it's either a sound test screen or it's you.
yeah, that's exactly
There's
it.
no one else.
So it was that sort of spurred me to change everything else. It spurred me to change my. I created a new email address which I still use to this day, which is DA Garden. I still use that email address for. I updated my YouTube account, so now it's under the name DA Garden with the same.
Do you ever get messages from fans like, "Dear DA Garden, I love that spinning planet, especially when you played the music. P.S. Do you know time trial screen?" Or some stupid crap like that.
No, I don't. But no, I do get the odd message from people on Discord, funnily enough, just asking me for God knows what questions or help or assistance with their projects. But yeah.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I didn't know it was Tweaker that convinced you to sort of change your name.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Tweaker decided that name. I'm like, wow.
No. He just told me, he was like, you just need to come up with a new username. And I just said, give me 10 minutes. I was like, I'll find something. Like I said, I was very tempted to call myself one of the bad nicknames from one of those, the Sonic CD bad nicks. I was like, any of these
Motorbug.
because they got really strange names like Patter Patter and stuff, haven't they? Things like that.
They have.
I thought something like that would be unique. You wouldn't see that quite often, But
Yeah. No, totally get it. Yeah, but no, I think it was a wonderful choice, a wonderful decision, and kind of lucky.
Yeah.
You spot the name as you close down. No, that's really quite amazing. So your name's changed to DA Garden. You released West Side. Why did you choose West Side Island? Seeing as we're on the topic of names, West Side Island. Why did you choose? I assume that's because it's like South Island, and I'm assuming, yeah.
I mean, that's it. It was just a case of literally last minute.
Okay.
I had to come up with the name for it. I was like, I can't just release. Here's a modification of Sonic 1. And like most of my project, it was originally just called Untitled Sonic 1 Hack. The same as I've also worked on Untitled Sonic 2 Hack, and Untitled Sonic 3 and Knuckles Hack, and also Untitled Sonic 2 Hack 2.
Untitled.bmp.
That's exactly it. So at the last minute, I'm just thinking, well, okay, what if it was, taking place on a different island? Because obviously it takes place on South Island. So I was like, no, I'm just going to call it West Side Island. There you go, done. And that was it. It was just the last minute change done. I thought that'll do. I'm not. No questions asked.
Now, after you completed West Side Island, I mean, did you have any other projects in mind? Were you still playing with ESC?
Yep, I was still using ESC with the various different ROMs. I started working on a Sonic 2 project, which I only have one video left on my YouTube channel of it. But I managed to corrupt it many times, annoyingly. And at that point, I had a few backups, but they weren't backed up with anybody on any server in particular. They were backed up by another user, who would handle backups for me, which was very nice of them to do so. Okay. I don't want to mention their name because I don't think that's appropriate. But
okay. Well, I mean, you couldn't fit it on the 8 megabyte stick you had, so
no, but they were handling online backups for me. So every now and again, I'd say, "Would you mind backing this up for me?" Like, yeah, sure. I'll just save a copy with a date and a time for you, and then if anything went wrong, I would ask them for that copy back and add that log of conversation with them. So I'd say, "Oh, do you have the last one I uploaded to you on this date?" And they'd say yes, and they'd give it back to me.
They're like a cloud,
A little bit, yeah, but it was with the user, and it was interesting because Sonic 2 was more prone to problems in ESE2 than Sonic 1.
I'm assuming that's because when it decompresses like the level art or whatever, and it has to recompress it, and sometimes it can't fit it back where it got it from, so it puts it on the end. But I think it loses track of where the different levels are, and it ends up with a conflict. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, it might be that. There was many problems with it. So I, obviously, at that point, with that project, that's the Untitled Sonic 2 hack that is on YouTube. That version was, funnily enough, made in Soned 2. It wasn't made in ESE2. The one that was made in ESE2 is just long gone. But the premise was always the same. It was always, okay, let's start working on a Sonic 2 project in the same vein. So that's what I tried to do. And the thing is as well, if you look very closely at that video, you can see a lot of really strange decisions based on how I've managed to edit art in Solid 2 and
Yeah.
things like that. But it was like never been a very artistic person, so to me, editing level art and things like that is just something that I just went for something very similar, a geometric pattern that sort of you can map across most of the level chunks, and that'll do sort of
Yeah.
mentality to it.
Yeah. It's just like more focused on laying out that kind of art, the
Yeah.
layout, the art of laying out the level.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you ever use Son Ed, the first one, or did you go straight to
No.
Naruto? You never used the first one.
I never used the first one. I remember after completing West Side Island,
Yeah.
I was talking to various people in IRC, and some people were very like, these levels are amazing. How have you done this? And asking me all sorts of questions. I was just like, well, I've been very critical of my own work. I think some people sort of can, understand that premise. So to me, it was just like, well, I haven't done anything spectacular here. All I've done is edit the layouts of the existing game and put the objects down in a different way, and I've released the project. I'm happy that it's a project and it's completed, but I don't think it's anything that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
So I couldn't quite understand why people were so happy about it. But it was more so they were like, well, yeah, but it's just the attention to detail here, the way you've managed to make the level feel like another Sonic game that wasn't released, and the level layout flows in a way that's quite similar to the original, and these sort of bits of feedback that I was getting that I wasn't expecting. And I was like, well, what do I do with that? But it was nice to hear at the same time. I was like, well, okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But it was based on that I had conversations with some people in IRC, and some people was asking me to consider working with them on projects and things like that. So after West Side Island was completed, I started talking to JXT about Sonic 1, as you mentioned earlier.
Sonic ONE, for
ONE,
clarity.
yeah.
The hack,
Yes.
just for a recap, when he says Sonic 1, he actually means there's a hack called Sonic 1, but the 1 wasn't the number, it was ONE, it was like the word of the number. We should probably call it Sonic ONE from now on, just to...
Yeah, Sonic ONE. So Sonic ONE. So he was showing me the fact that he'd started working on level art, and a full restructure of what was basically the Marble Zone, but edited so drastically in a way that I was not expecting.
Yeah.
And it was new level art, and the chunks had been redrawn with different collision.
Yeah, there's
And this is
new
the sort of
music
stuff I
as
was like, yeah, I was like, how have you done all this? He goes, I've just been sitting down and working with a disassembly of Sonic 1. And I was like, a disassembly? I think I've read about these. I was like, but I don't understand how they work.
Yeah.
So we sat down over a couple of days, and he sat down and explained to me how a disassembly worked. And he was showing me like what he could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
And he was showing me like some of the progress to it. And he sent me a ROM and was like, okay, so I've achieved this by doing this in Solid 2. And I was like, wow. Just surprised that you could do. You had that level of customability. One of the things that surprised me was like, so when it comes to level layouts, you have no objects because this is a brand new project. Now, if I double click, you can create an object. And I went, whoa, what?
Yeah, but you were using Sonic 2 the whole time.
Yeah.
You didn't know you could delete objects or add new ones.
Yeah. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, so he's there going, right. So what you can do is you can literally have a blank canvas, start drawing tiles and stuff directly into Solid 2. Then you can apply collision to them, and then you can start placing objects, double clicking and creating new objects, and then placing them where you like. And I was like, okay, I think I need to shift over to using a disassembly. I was like, this is crazy.
It's like a revolution now.
So the first thing he did was he sent over his disassembly for Sonic ONE, and he's like, okay, this is what I've currently got, play through it, get a feel for it, and if you're comfortable, he goes, all I would like you to do is see if you can make a layout for Act 3 for this project.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just asking for an Act 3 for this level.
I'm going to stop you for a minute, because I want to read out a comment that JXT mentioned about this. He was reminiscing about this. He says... art and music for the hack were mine. I'm paraphrasing him, what he said. So his. As were the layouts until Burnout kicked in, and I asked my friend Diego to help out with them. After playing his Sonic 1 hack, West Side Island, I thought he was a very talented man indeed, and wanted to work with him. as far as Sonic 1 or ONE goes, DA only completed the one layout before I ditched the project due to burnout, which is the one on his YouTube. Unquote.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
it.
that's the Act 3, yeah?
So Act 3 of that project, i.e. the video that I put on my YouTube, was the one I worked on.
Yeah.
Still working with the same level size for the boss being where it was placed, but the rest of it was trying to create a new layout with the chunks that he'd already created.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't editing the existing ones already. I was again using chunks that already been pre-made with certain collision, with certain
Yeah.
usage, and then mapping a new layout for them. So I did that for that project, and I remember like passing him the first version of that, and him just going, I didn't even know you could use the chunks like this. And I'm just like, oh, is that a good thing?
Were you still working with the boundaries? Were you still working with the same boundaries?
Yeah, I didn't know how any of that worked. I had no idea how any of that worked. So I was just like, oh yeah, I'm still working with the same level boundary, the same boss being the same place. He said to me, he goes, you can move the boss where you like because it's a disassembly. I was like, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
So I've just worked within the same restrictions that I've always worked with. So that's what I did. And then that level came to be, and then I started work, funnily enough, on the next, before the project died. Actually, he didn't just stop there. We did start working on the Green Hill Zone equivalent,
Yeah.
and he showed me the chunks that he'd made for that. And I remember we didn't argue, but we had like a discussion on how some of the chunks that he'd made I felt could be better, like they could be
Yeah.
less single purpose and more multi-purpose for a level layout, because a lot of them felt like they was created solely for one purpose and never used again. I thought surely that's a waste of
Resource. Yeah.
chunk usage, resources, chunk
Yeah.
usage. So maybe they could be reshaped in a way that sort of accommodated that better.
Yeah.
So that's when I started looking at how he'd made them in Solid 2 and how you could sort of edit them, map out the tiles and then put your own collision on them.
Yeah.
At that point is when he turned around to me and was like, yeah, I don't think I want to be working on this anymore. He said, I just don't have no passion for it, no drive. He said to me, he goes, it's not you, it's just I don't feel like I want to continue with this. I mean, I said to him, I said, like, I understand what you mean. I was like, I've seen so many ROM hacks come and go that have been the start of something big and then just come to a standstill. And it could be the members of the development team as a whole. It could have been just one person who was leading the project who, like happened, lost motivation or interest in the project. They have the time, they have the resources, whatever it is. These projects do come up that look fantastic, but sometimes then don't go any further. And I've seen it happen so often. So it was no surprise to me when he was like, yeah, I don't want to work on this anymore. And I said, that's totally understandable. I said, and I can't work on it on my own without direction because I don't understand how half of this has been done already.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't want to take on that mantle of doing that.
But, I mean, I happen to know part of this because this is when I came into the scene. And when he'd spoken to me, and I think it was round about the time he lost the drive, because he was saying to me that he didn't feel happy. He felt like people were like laughing behind his back, and he was very, very sort of upset. He thought that his project was more rubbish than what it was. And I think even at one point, if I remember rightly, he even offered the assets to me. And I said, well, no, I don't want to take it. I want you to keep the assets and I want you to keep working on your project. I'll be fine. You keep working on your project because your project is pretty good. You can't give this up. But he ended up giving the assets to Aquaslash for S Factor Sonya and Silver in the end. But I do remember that conversation all these years later that I had with him about that. So yeah, he did lose quite a bit of drive. I think he was very, very upset, which is a real shame. I think it could have been a really good project.
Yeah, I mean, I had fun working on that project because it was like I had no restrictions. I had to work under nothing. Well, I had the restrictions, obviously, Marble Zone that I was working in, but I didn't have the restrictions of what project I was working on and new things to consider and things like that. And I'll touch up on that in a bit. But it was nice knowing that I was basically asked from Jay to just do what you do, Work on a layout with the assets I'm giving you and see what you can come up with. And if it's good enough, we'll keep it. And if you're not happy with it or I'm not happy with it, then we'll discuss it. But until then, just do what you do. And I enjoyed working on it. I remember figuring out how Sonnet 2 worked as a result of that project. It's the first thing I worked on, the disassembly with Sonnet 2. And I was just, to me, it was a new world I had never experienced before. Having that freedom to, like I said, just place as many objects as I wanted, as few objects as I wanted. I didn't have that restriction of trying to find existing objects, changing their sub IDs and silly things like that.
Yeah, so third eye is opened.
Exactly, yeah. And like I said, that project, if I hadn't worked on it, I don't know where I would have gone, sort of, with the Sonic hacking scene. I don't know how that would have progressed at that point.
Yeah.
Very vital point of that progressing.
I mean, did he show you how to move the boss in the end?
No. I mean, I learned myself, but it took a lot longer than I would have liked. There's a lot of assembly code was never my forte. It was, and it still isn't even today. I still only know the bare minimum. I think to.
The disassembly at the time was vastly uncommented, so it was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, it's like go to location _9 F2A7 and change this variable from move W1800 to move W1750 or something. I was like, what? I was like, how do you even understand how any of this works? It's like, no.
Well, you'll find like a label that says, alter, like point object, and you find out the object's nothing to do with the points, it's to do with the explosion or something stupid like that.
Oh yeah, there was plenty of them. Yeah, I remember one saying
wow.
I remember thinking when I started looking at assembly, just for a small bit, just to figure out how to make like different object types for monitors.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh yeah, well the monitor's object 26. So I was like, okay, let's have a look.
The contents aren't.
Yeah, the contents are a completely different object, but I didn't know this. So I was like, well, how is it able to give me 10 rings?
Okay, right, stop right there. We're going to put your encyclopedia skills to the test here.
Okay.
What is the contents ID?
2E.
Oh, very good. Very good. See? He is the encyclopedia of Sonic 1 objects.
Usually it's when I say stuff like you need an object 71 there, or 74 of Sonic 2, or object 6B of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and people look at me and go, what?
That's the invisible solid block.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a changes variable between game, but I use them like the original games do to the extent where they're needed.
Going back to Sonic ONE, so JXD, he's given up on the project. He's gone off to do other things. I don't know too much about that. I know he eventually gave the resources to Aquaslash for S-Factor, Sonya and Silver. I don't know how much you know about that, the transaction that went on or anything like that. Do you know anything?
I know that at the time I was talking to Aquaslash on a small basis on IRC in general, because I had a lot of different one-on-one conversations happening. I was talking to Jay one-on-one. I was talking to Malevolence, also at the time known as Apasionata.
That's right. Yes, he was. I forgot about that. He's the one who invited me into the community. Wow.
So I was talking to him, Jay, Aquaslash. I was talking to Tweaker from time to time. More just like he kept on was asking me small questions to do with working on West Side Island and ideas. It was really very interesting discussions we had back then. But yeah, I was talking to loads of different people, and then Jay mentioned that obviously as a result of that he didn't want to work on the project anymore, that the assets wouldn't be lost in any way. And I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, well, I'm going to be moving, he said, based on giving this to somebody else. He goes, Access is working on S-Factor, which is Sonya and Silver, and I just cut him off and said, I know what you're talking about. I said, so do you mean that the level layouts that are what you've made so far will be pushed across to this project? He said, yeah. He goes, essentially that's what's happening. I'm giving them to Aquaslash. He can use them however he wants. However he wants to use them. And I said, oh. I said, so I'm not working on the project anymore because obviously it no longer exists. But I have been talking to Aquaslash anyway.
Yeah.
So he said, from now on, if you still want to work on the project is S-Factor. So if you want to continue working on it.
So hang on a minute. I'm just sort of trying to understand. So you were called on by Aquaslash for like ideas to maybe work on his project that you didn't know would receive Sonic ONE's
Well, it was more just a discussion of Aquasas and I were just talking, and it was just more like he's working on S
Okay.
Factor. Okay, cool. And then when Jay mentioned that obviously he was giving the assets to Aquasas for S Factor, so I know what S Factor is.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And Jay
Yeah.
goes, if you still want to work on the project that was Sonic ONE but is now S Factor,
Yeah.
I don't think Aquasas would have a problem if you continue to work on it that way. So obviously we then joined our own little channel to discuss it as a group rather than just in private messages.
Yeah.
And in that discussion, it was a case of Aquasasa says, if you still want to work on the project, I'm happy to have you on board working on layouts. No problem. And Jay goes, DA, if you still want to work on the same project, but now that it's been passed to Aquaslash, you're able to. Because you still have access to the disassembly, you still have access
Yeah.
to, the old resources. You can still make tweaks to it, changes to it, improvements, whatever you want to do to that layout you've made for Marble 3 or whatever that's now going to become, and you can obviously start work on some of the other levels that I've already worked on. So I was like, okay. I said that sounds fine to me. I'll continue to working on with it because at that point, Jay didn't just like leave everything straight away. He was still advising Aquaslash on a few things, so quite a
It
few
was a
months I
it was a
remember.
proper handover then. It was a
Yeah, yeah,
proper.
yeah. That's the thing. Jay was like, "Oh," I goes, "Well, here's the art that I've currently made for the first level. Obviously, it's in progress. There's some things that need to be changed about it, improved upon it, but this is what I've got." And then
So that
Aquaslash,
shows that just shows that he really did still care. That
yes.
he really did care about it. But yeah.
So I remember, obviously, we started, you know, merging everything together into one big project. And at that point, I'd
Mhm.
never really used source control of any kind. So I remember we had, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Fragag actually, who showed me how Tortoise SPM worked and how you could do version control on ROM hacks. So obviously you would only submit the files that you've edited to like a repository and then you'd pull them back. And all this was new to me. So all I knew was that if I just right clicked in a folder now that I had it installed, I could then click push. And then if anything went wrong, I would ask Fragag and I'd show him the image of what the error, and he'd tell me how to fix it. And he said, after you've pushed,
Yeah.
then pull everything back. And that's all I did every time. I did the same actions back and forth for about a year until I looked into it further to understand what I was actually doing. But yeah, I just remember, yeah, working for it like that. So
Uh,
yeah,
yeah. I forgot Fragag worked on it. He's one of those names you just forget. Is it just me?
some of the stuff he knew surprised me. Like he would come out with
Yeah.
stuff and tell me, I was like, I didn't know, I had
Yeah.
no idea that's how it worked.
He was a very clever man. He was a good programmer.
Yeah.
The thing, actually, one thing I wanted to ask is the IRC channel was still called Sonic ONE
Was,
for a
yes.
very, very long time.
Yeah.
So was the IRC channel originally Sonic ONE's?
I,
I mean,
be-
I'm assuming it was.
I believe the one we were a part of was, yes. I know the one I joined was. Didn't That was what it always was when I was first asked to join it. So I don't know anything of the history beforehand. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I
uh,
was just wondering
yeah,
because yeah, I just vaguely remember the IRC channel. Um, yeah. Okay, so all right, so things have moved on to S Factor, Sonya, and Silver. Jay's passed it on. I think he was still in the channel for a while.
yes,
Then he disappeared. I think he had real life stuff. He had
yeah,
projects. He used to do a lot of animations and stuff. So he's slowly left. Aquastash is in charge,
hmm
and you're making layouts for this new project. I mean, I'm assuming you are okay with all of this. I assume it was everything was fine,
yeah.
everything went smoothly, and
I mean, at the time, I made it no secret that I was working on things on my own as a side project. I made it no secret of that. I mean, I
hmm
remember there was a short period of time actually where after I joined, after everything emerged into S Factor, we were unsure about what we were working on, about what
hmm
levels and things like that. And then at the time, Malevolence and I had an idea of working on another project, just myself and him. And
hmm
it was like Sonic 2 beta, but fixed up, which is obviously a very unoriginal idea. But at the time, we thought we were trying to do something a bit, clever, a bit new. And obviously, he said I could add some
Yeah.
custom bosses into it. You can make some new layouts for the levels that are prototypes at the time.
Yeah, he was learning to
Yeah,
program a lot of these bosses. He programmed the little uh, buzz bomber flame bullet extension and stuff like that.
yeah. So
Back on Sonic ONE.
that's the thing. So
Yeah.
to me, it made sense that obviously he'd already worked on that and some of the code. So I was like interested, but that never came anywhere. It was just sort of like a thing that was thrown away. But
Hmm.
as a result of that, it was I'd obviously then tried to do Sonic 2 ROM hack on my own, and that became obviously the YouTube video I mentioned earlier with the Wing Fortress
Yeah.
zone that was edited. That project then failed, and it was irrecoverable because the backup I'd made was broken.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't recover it. And then the person I spoke to who was handling backup said, unfortunately, that's the last one I've got. And I turned around to him and said, literally, I said, I can't be bothered to work on this anymore. My interest has just been killed because it's
Nah.
broken. It's just been killed. I was like, I have one video on YouTube of this project,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I'm done with it. So I was like, I want to work on something though. I want to work on something on my own as well as work on S Factor. That was my intention
Yeah.
to myself. I want to have a project that I can pick up and put down of my own name. It's all my own work.
Yeah.
So what I did, I was just talking with Jay still at the time, back and forth about it,
Hmm.
and Jay was saying, "Well, there's loads of Sonic 2 hacks, so people love Sonic 2, and there's loads of Sonic 1 hacks, so people love Sonic 1, but there is nothing for Sonic 3." And I'm like, "You're right, there is no Sonic
Yes.
3 hacks." So I turned to
Yeah.
him and I said, "What if I made one?" He said, well, "How would you do it?" I goes, "Well, I've got ESE2." I was like, "I've used ESE2 for years. I think based on the fact that it loads Sonic 3 and Knuckles."
That's right. Yeah, it does edit Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
So I've said I can make a
Yeah.
ROM hack of Sonic 3 and Knuckles in ESE2. I said, how about if I did that? I said, I think that would achieve something. I said, I think I could do that game justice by making new layouts for it. That's what I said to him. And he said, yeah. He said, I'd like to
Hmm.
see that. So,
Yeah.
true to my word, that's the project I started at that point. In 2009, I started working on Sonic 3 DA Garden Edition at the same time as also working on S Factor.
Wow. Now, yeah, this is getting really interesting because I know at some point you did move from ESC to Soned for your project in the
Yeah.
end, but we're gonna talk about that in a moment. But at first, we're gonna have a little bit of a break. I'm gonna play some music now, if you wouldn't mind.
That's right.
I'm dying to go to the toilet. So we're going to be playing. This is something that Mr. Cat Pixel has made. It's called A New Friend.
Ooh.
Oh, that was lovely. That was A New Friend by Mr. Cat Pixel for a currently yet unknown project. The project is called The Boundless Wheatfield, which is currently work in progress, and hopefully we'll get to see more of that project in the future. Well, that was actually quite lovely. I'm not entirely sure. I know he can play the accordion, but I don't know if that accordion section is actually him. I'll have to ask him about that. But the musical section at the very end was a very nice touch.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very nice. sometimes he just gives me these recordings, and some of them are really, really lovely. I think he just, I guess, gives up on them a bit too soon. Towards the end of a lot of them, but no, they're absolutely lovely. You know, he's got a talent there, and you know, one day you might hear it in some sort of movie. That would be really, really nice.
It would be.
So, we were talking about how, whilst you're working on the S Factor, you got into working on Sonic 3 and Knuckles, a hack. And this is your next project, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, DA Garden Edition.
Oh.
Okay, and you started this in 2009.
Yeah, I did.
And if memory serves me correctly, this took you nearly 10 years to complete?
6 years.
Am I... 6?
Yes.
Okay.
It was released in...
My memory is poor then.
No, it was released in 2015. The reason why I remember the time schedules was because I started it the year before I went back to college. I was at college for 2 years, university for 3 years, and I finished it during my last year of university.
Okay. So I'm way overestimating the time, but still, 6 years is a long time, man. You know, okay, so you started off with ESE2.
Yes.
You started with this project, and so talk us through the process, because I remember you mentioning how Angel Island was a pain in the arse to work with, collision-wise and structural-wise.
Yeah, Angel Island's own Act 1, and I say Act 1 loosely in the what do you call it, the restrictions of the original game. So Angel Island's own Act 1 internally is from the intro section where you meet Knuckles to the firebombing, that's it. But that small section internally is Act 1. And the layout is very specifically made for the layout that you see. There's a lot of use of custom chunks that are only used in very specific ways. So coming into that level and trying to create a layout for it, a new one, was extremely challenging because the collision doesn't allow for chunks to be used in very many other ways other than the ones that they were originally created for. There's obviously huge amounts of chunks used specifically for the intro cutscene, the fire bombing, the spiraling around the inside of the tree. You know, those chunks are already used and they have a specific purpose, so that used up a lot of the chunk limit. So you then have a limited number of chunks where the layout has been basically created for that specific small act, and the restrictions are much bigger than before. So,
well, this is like clear proof that they literally did have, okay, here is a large piece of paper, here's the square grid, we are actually drawing this layout on paper before we put it in game. That's a clear indication of this, surely.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I never really approached level development, level layouts like that. I've always been quite sort of
trial and error, experimental kind of.
Yeah, it's sort of like trial and error is pretty a good way of doing it. I will usually blank out a level and then just try putting chunks together. And
I think most people would do that.
But obviously with the consideration of what chunks actually connect with other chunks. And that's one of the things I want to sort of stress really, is because I've seen so many projects that don't follow that basic rule, where chunks are created in such a way that they only connect to other certain chunks. So you can't just place everything in it however way you want and expect it all to work. You have to sort of approach it in a very methodical way, and I think that is why level layouting comes as second nature to me, whereas other people it's not. They want to be able to and just sort of freehand do what they like with it, whereas this is very similar to, like, say, for example, like building something with Lego blocks. You already have your predefined Lego blocks in certain sets and sizes and shapes, and you're just making something with those existing blocks. That is literally how level layouts work. They don't allow that. There is obviously the freedom to create your own chunks, create your own collision, but again, that all then is still using the existing art that has already been created for the layout. So, when you take a level like Angel Island Zone 1, for example, that was very specifically designed around the idea they had in the first place, then, it's very difficult to sort of take that, adjust it into something new. Very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, like, you were mostly focused on this one project, but you were also doing S Factor on the side. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had a bit more freedom and flexibility with S Factor, and DA Garden Edition, was your own project, so you had flexibility with that. I mean, did you ever have any sort of stress involved with doing these two at once? I'm assuming not, but
No, I mean the thing with West Factor is it was something that I picked up when things were readily available to me as a resource. So I didn't want to make like a new Marble Zone layout for Marble Zone. I didn't want to make a new Labyrinth Zone layout for Labyrinth Zone. I was always assured that obviously the gate was open for me to explore and try new things. But because I'd never done level art before, because I wasn't fully versed in how collision worked, I didn't want to sort of like start doing that with S Factor. So I said to Aquaslash, I was like, I'm not comfortable with making new chunks by myself from scratch. I don't understand fully how all that process works. So I'd rather if he's like, no, it's fine, understandable. He's like, if you want me to create the chunks for you and then you develop around that. So I'll make the new level art, create some new chunks with it, and then once I give them to you, you can make level layouts with them. And that made perfect sense to me, but obviously then that's a waiting game for that to be done by somebody else. So obviously during that waiting game, I'm like, well, I'm going to carry on working on. At the time, it was called the Untitled Sonic 3 and Knuckles project.
so you had quite a good degree of freedom.
Yeah, that was it.
No,
I never was.
yeah.
I didn't. There wasn't many restrictions there. It was more. The restrictions came in place when I had like an initial idea of how the level layout would go, and I had like a draft layout, and then I was told a bit later in S Factor's process of development that Silver's going to have this ability to use the psychic ability to pick up enemies and throw them, and Sonia's going to have the ability to break through spikes with her tornado spin. Can you incorporate that into your layouts? And I'm just like, well, that's kind of awkward because I've already developed a level layout that doesn't accommodate these things.
Yeah,
So it felt like I had to
yeah.
go back and revise what I already made to accommodate these new character actions that weren't there in the first place.
Well,
So
they've done these studies before where they've got people in a room to build these like Lego plane, and then halfway through it they say, right, everyone, we've changed a plan. You're going to make a car instead, and
yeah,
they look at the number of people and say, well, how many of them would actually destroy it all, start from scratch, and how many of them would adapt the plane into a car? So which one do you fit in the field? Did you adapt most of it? Did you re-scrap most of it? Like, which was it, a mix of both?
it was it really was actually a mix of both because some of the level layouts were just completely unusable at that point when we had like a difference in speed between Silver and Sonya, which was then reflected in obviously the different character styles. Some of the layouts
Yeah.
just no longer were playable with, say, Silver. Whereas obviously Sonya's new ability to break spikes meant that I had to rethink where spikes were placed, how they were used. Then some of the existing layouts would allow me to do that, but some of them didn't, and it was just a case of okay, what can I salvage from what I've already created? What can I recreate from scratch? What can be adjusted to suit these new character abilities? And that's that was
Yeah,
it's quite
I
usually on a
am.
level by level basis. It's not
Yeah,
as simple as just I'm going to scrap it all and start again because I don't want to lose progress I'd already made. But
but to add to that, you also had, because I mean, S Factor's not a very linear project. There was loads of people who came in, they came and went. You had loads of different programmers, loads of different artists. I still stand. It kind of felt like too many shifts spoiling the broth in a way. But I mean, as far as you're concerned in terms of layout, I mean, surely that would have been an added difficulty when someone comes along and programs an extra object or something like that. I mean, did you ever had any issues
yeah,
with that?
I mean, obviously when we had I can't remember the level's name annoyingly, Celtic Street, which used to be called Sky Highway. And
Yeah.
obviously that was redone, I think, by yourself, wasn't it, with the new level art.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then we had
Yeah.
the fan object added, the booster object added, and I
Oh, yeah.
obviously,
The floating fan.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So these objects were added in, and obviously the existing layout I had to immediately trash. And I was like, well, it doesn't work now because there's these new objects and I haven't created a layout for them. So I had to trash
Yeah.
that, for example, and trash that and start again. Whereby with, for example, some of the existing layouts like Arid Temple, which obviously Act 1 and Act 2 originally for Sonic
Yeah.
ONE, But then I went back to them and tried to update them to be a bit more friendly
Yeah.
to like Silver's ability to now hover, Sonya's ability to now break spikes, and but not redo the entire layout because I didn't feel like there was time to do that. I didn't feel like that was a good use of time either. I thought it was like, well, we've got these layouts that are mostly working, and I can accommodate their new abilities into the existing layouts, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it's worth me scrapping everything.
But you weren't the only level layout artist on there. There were a few
Yeah.
others. Like I didn't what was his name? He worked on another project. I can't quite picture the name, and I can't remember his name either.
Thorn?
I feel really embarrassed. Thorn, that was it.
There's a reason why I remember Thorn, because obviously I'll get back into that later. But yeah, him and I are still on talking terms, and yeah, like he's worked on number of projects on his own as well, like
That's right.
Sonic 2
Yes,
Retro Remix, for example, which was
that's the hack I was thinking of. Yeah,
yeah,
but he did a few layouts as well.
yes,
And so the hack has had quite a lot of different layouts
yeah.
by different people. I think that's partly why it gets quite a bit of bad press. There's just like loads of people who worked on different things, and it's become all jumbled. I think that
But you
and
can
it
tell.
kind of puts hard press on you because you're known as the level layout guy, and people look at this layout and say, "Oh yeah, DA did that, and it wasn't even you." Like,
Yeah, I do. I have had that before, where it's like, oh, DA worked on that. I'm like, actually, I didn't. I've said to him like, oh, Arid.
it's complicated
Yeah,
to
yeah.
explain.
If I go Arid Temple, and I'm like, oh, you Act 3 I worked on, yes. Act 1 and 2 didn't work on them. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
why? It's like that's just how it was. The same with like Chaotic Street. What did you work on? I worked on Act 3. Didn't work on
Yeah,
Act 1 and
exactly.
2.
Yeah,
And this is examples, but it's like in certain levels I worked on, other levels I might have worked on, and that work might have been scrapped, for example.
yeah.
It was like,
Or someone else has come along, made a modification to it for another
yeah,
object. You did the original, they modified it, and it's screwed up the flow a little bit.
yeah. I mean, I worked on small sections of like the second level sorry, first level, the Green Hill Zone replacement, for example. I worked on small sections of that on top of what Aquasas himself had already worked on. So it was just like updating small parts of that, fixing a few bugs, but I didn't actually work on the layout per se. And
Yeah.
I noticed my role changed over time as well with S Factor from me being the level layout guy for the project. It was I worked on level layouts, but I was also like a big bug tester. But then that sort of goes back to I've always been like quite aware of things like that, like bug testing, and then
Yes.
mentioning bugs that I notice to people, to other two project, people who work on other projects, to developers, and say, I've noticed this. This is a problem. And the first question I usually get back is, how did you figure this out? And I'm like,
Yeah. Some people have that skill. You are one of them. Sonic Van, I don't know if you remember him. He was one of them.
yeah,
He had that skill. He could find bugs you wouldn't find in a million years. And suddenly he comes along, finds it in 2 seconds, and you think, what? Like, get out of here.
well, yeah, I remember one of the really bad ones we had was with the special stage in S Factor, whereby you could cause the water level to go right to the top of the screen. You could cause the level to crash to the point where even a soft reset would reset, even on emulator or hardware, and stuff like that. And I was like, I found this, and I'd say to Aquasas, I found this, and he would just turn to me and go, how? And I'm like, I explained the steps to him. He's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I'm a
Why
player.
not?
Why am I not doing that? Why am I not trying to see if this works?
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not supposed to be playing it the way you want me to play it.
That's exactly it, and that's the sort of like the different sort of mentality you have to
Yeah.
have to be able to find that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly. You need people who think that way on your project because it helps you cover the bugs that you would never see yourself.
That's exactly it. You
Yeah.
need people who are willing to go over somebody else's work like that and go, actually, this does this, is supposed to do that. And with general code anyway, that's like a given. But when it comes to like a project where you're working on level layouts for a hack for a project, even if it's just like a game, another game, it isn't a hack, but like being able to test those to ensure that the whole experience is smooth is quite a difficult task. Like I imagine, like for example, doing that for the original Sonic 2, for example, that would be insane. But we also have no idea of what level of bugs were there before those testers found them and fixed them. We don't know what was there beforehand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
We don't we still even now we don't know the process of these old games. And we
exactly
probably
it.
never
So
will. You know,
I used to approach
most of the people
yeah.
who did know probably don't remember it clearly enough. You know.
I just approach it the best way I can. Like I just, I try things that might seem a bit strange, but a player might try, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then if something goes wrong, I then mention it to whoever is in charge of the project. So, this has happened. Is it supposed to do that? Is it not supposed to do that?
Yeah. So I want to press forward now. I want to move on to Sonic 3 and Knuckles DA Garden Edition.
Yeah.
Now, so I mean, this took you 6 years to do, and I mean, like, I know it's a big game, but I would never have imagined it would take 6 years to do. I mean, how long did West Side Island take you? Probably about a year?
West Side Island took me, I think, a year and a half, I think. It didn't take very long. Obviously, the level size is partly to do with that. Obviously, the levels are a lot smaller, both in height and length. And obviously, I'm still working with the restrictions of whatever the level sizes are at that point. So yeah, there's the levels are much bigger, but also the thing with Garden Edition is you have to consider Knuckles too.
Right, yeah.
It's not.
Part.
It's not just layouts for Sonic from left to right or Sonic and Tails from left to right. It's layouts for Sonic and Tails left to right, but also consider the fact that Knuckles has his own paths to take, and that's part of what took it so long, because you have to create a layout for Knuckles that also works with the new layout for Sonic and Tails and obviously I still was working in the original restrictions for the camera, for the water levels, water levels. That's a very good point to bring up. Working with the original water levels and movement in Sonic 3 and Knuckles is absolutely painful.
And most of the levels are water in Sonic 3.
Exactly, that's why.
All but one.
Yeah, so 5 of those 6 zones have water in them. So having to work with that was also a challenge, because there's no indication in an editor of where that water level is, where it changes. You have to just be aware of that yourself. So that was...
And you can't just I mean, did you use the skill that you used in ESE where you'd put red and yellow springs in?
No,
height?
Funnily enough, no. I had just changed slightly the way I worked, to the point where I mostly I make a small change, I save, I build the ROM, I test it. I make another small change, I save, I build the ROM, I test it. Repeat.
Okay.
This is part of the reason why it took so long.
Because
I was very meticulous in the way that I was doing it. I was very aware that I want, if I put in a new loop with 5 rings, put in the path swappers, and then put a platform at the end of it, save that, build it, test it.
Yeah.
Every time. And it sounds like a very monotonous, and it kind of was, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that everything was working as clean and perfect as I could. And and as a result of that, when it came to the end of the project after such a long period of time, there was very little time required by me to go back and ensure that everything was tested and was fully working. That process didn't take anywhere near as long as I was expecting, because I'd tested it as I was going.
But, I mean, surely you're playing it not just as the way you would play it, but as the way other people would play it too. I mean, we just had this discussion with S Factor, in terms of finding bugs, Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of that as I'm testing it. I'm like, hang on a minute, right, I've done this loop in here, so what if I then play as Tails, what if I then do this? What if I then play as Knuckles and I then do this? And it's doing that every single time that I make a change.
Yeah.
Like I said, it did get a bit monotonous at times, and obviously, but then I didn't work on it, say, flat out for 6, 7, 8 hours in one go. Most of the time, it's just a case of I'm at college or I'm at university. I've just done that for the day. I come home, I'll open up Solid 2 and work on insert random level here for an hour. And that's usually how it went. So I would just pick up, say, Flying Battery. I'm going to work on Flying Battery 2 this evening. I'm going to work on Flying Battery 2. I'm going to extend the layout from, say, this to this. That's roughly my end point for tonight. I'm going to work on that. And if I got there, I got there, great. If I didn't, I didn't. But it was just I hope I can get there, and then at least I can play, and I'd have about a minute's worth of level layout that I could run through and test, and it all works correctly as best as it could. So that's what it was. It was a combination of working on, obviously, other projects like Aspecta. It was like college or university work that took up my time, and then at the end of the day, instead of me chilling out and doing anything else, like watching films or hanging out with people, but still I worked on the project, and it was just that was the thing I worked on.
Well, you could argue it's a hobby. I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing. It was my hobby for that time that I was working on it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's exactly it.
I mean, if you really ask me, if you said, well, would you rather work on this hobby, or would you want to sit down and watch TV? I'd rather work on the hobby. You say, well, if you would want to work on the hobby, or do you want to go out with some mates? Well, I don't know. Sometimes one, sometimes the other.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other things I'm thinking is how much content you've had to scrap and redo because you found too many bugs with it, and it didn't matter what you did, didn't matter how you placed the objects, just there was always some way that it could be broken. Have you ever had situations like that where you've retried over and over and over again? Okay, I'll move it here. Okay, I'll move that there. Why isn't this working? I want these chunks in this particular way, but it doesn't matter what I do, it ain't working. Screw it, wipe, let's do that section again.
That happened more times than I can count. Angel Island Zone Act 1 went through that because obviously of the chunks and how they were laid out. Actually, very quickly before I get onto that, I'll just mention that for the first 2 years of this project, 2009 to 2011, this was in ESE2.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the Sonic and Knuckles disassembly was released, the first version of it, in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And I then decided, because obviously it was released and it was public, to try and move everything across that disassembly. I didn't do that on my own. I did that with the help of Main Memory, I believe, helped me.
Oh,
She's very helpful.
Bless her.
And also helped me with some of the other small technical bits, like adjusting the water level a little bit at the start of Hydra City Act 1.
I mean, I'm assuming she took you through the source and showed you where most of the stuff was.
I tried to do it myself, and then if there was any problems, I then obviously asked for her help. I said, do you know how this works? And as we were in a public IRC, sometimes I get a response back with an answer I needed or something. Sometimes I'd be told information I didn't fully understand. But I still took it on board and was like, okay, so I can do it if I do this, or that could fix that. But but the process wasn't as difficult as I thought it was, because obviously in the disassembly, you just have like you can run the split assembler on a ROM and it'll create the disassembly for you.
Yeah.
And because I'd worked on the project in ESE2, the ROM was still the same size and all the offsets were still the same.
Yeah.
So when I ran split on the ESE2 ROM, it created disassembly with my existing changes mostly there intact.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So I didn't have to worry too much about, I've lost anything. And if there was anything small that was wrong, I then could update it and do so now using Solid 2. So I thought, well, that's obviously much more approachable than trying to do it beforehand in ESE2. And I've now removed the restriction of object limits, and I can now look at making minor code edits. And that's the thing as well. It was very important to stress this as well. At that point, I'd started to understand small amounts of assembly code. Not a lot, but enough to understand how to, say, change variables from one number to another and how that would impact code. Yeah. So I could take the Lava Reef Zone 2 boss that has 14 hit points and reduce it down to 8. Nice and simple
Thank
change.
God.
But it's a nice and simple change, but it was something that once I figured out I could do that, I did it. And I was like, that works. That actually makes that boss have 8 hit points. Perfect. I'm going to keep that change in.
Thank God. Way too many hit points, that boss.
But that's one of the small things I tried to do. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just me working on this project at the same time, because at the same time I was working on the A Garden Edition, I was also in contact with Utopia UK, who was working on his own Sonic 3 and Knuckles ROM hack.
Yeah.
So we would talk back and forth, share ideas, share what we'd found with the first disassembly of Sonic and 3 and Knuckles, and give us the information to each other to sort of help each other out. So it was like, where's the layout for this? And he'd tell me about, perfect, thank you. And then a week later, he's like, how would you edit this? I'm like, I think you edit that. And 10 minutes later, thank you. And that was it. Small back and forth, but it was nice to know that somebody else was trying something with the same disassembly.
Sharing ideas.
So we managed to sort of slowly help each other out over time. Obviously, I know that project, I don't think it's being worked on anymore as far as I'm aware, but the last time I saw of it, there was still some really interesting changes in there that I would not expect, things that are going above and beyond what I would ever expect to see from that disassembly. But it was just nice to know that somebody else was just as interested as I was at the time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's really quite fascinating. Going back just briefly to ESC2, you mentioned how you was able to just split the ROM because the offsets were the same. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
that ESC2 treats Sonic 3 and Knuckles the same way as it would treat Sonic 1, and it wouldn't shuffle. Like, you couldn't edit the art very easily, for example.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
expect that. I think that's the case. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's like Sonic One because I remember beforehand. Obviously, there was a version of West Side Island that was modified by somebody else, which I think was you actually. I can't remember. Yeah, it was. It wasn't it. I don't know whether that's relevant, but yeah, because it's basically the original
Hmm.
ROM. You can take West Side Island and split it like in a Sonic One disassembly, and you can have a disassembly of West Side Island. You can
Yeah,
do that.
that's. I think that's what I did. I did that for
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I can't remember what you were doing with it. What did you want to do with that project? I can't remember.
I was considering at one point like revamping it because I had access to disassembly. I could make the level layouts a little bit larger,
Yeah,
fix some of the problems, be a bit more clever with the object usage, etc.
yeah. I
It never really got off
distinctively
the
remember.
ground.
I distinctively remember doing that. I mean, it wasn't any skill or anything. It was just pop the roll in, run the split, and done. You know? But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
of
I
course.
just couldn't
But
remember what you can do with it.
I was tempted, like I said, to revamp it and sort of make a new version of it that was better. But it was just an idea that I tried. The fact that I could do
Yeah,
it was interesting enough to me, but never any further. So
I mean, I want to move on to. I'm still within the realms of Sonic 3 and Knuckles here because
yeah,
there were a few levels that I remembered playing, and then when I played the final version, they weren't there anymore. You changed them. I distinctively
yeah.
remember one of the Hydra City levels. I remember there were sections of the layout that I can still remember them to this day. Very distinctive things. You know when you play a level in a Sonic game and you get to a section and that section is memorable. You remember it because it sticks out slightly, like Green Hill Zone Act 2. You know, you got the section with the platforms and there's like bottomless pits around that area, and then there's that one checkpoint post on that. Yeah, that's a memorable section, and there were a few of them in the original ROM you'd had sent me. I remembered those sections, and then when it got to the final version, it's like you redid the whole layout. So I'm wondering, how many of the layouts did you redo?
Um, I know for a fact that Mushroom Hill 1 and 2 went through many revisions. The worst one was Mushroom Hill 2 because I actually managed about four different full layouts from start to finish for it that I
Mm-hmm.
scrapped every single one of them. I was never happy with that layout. I'm still not happy with it now.
Jeez.
I just don't like. I was somewhat happy with Mushroom Hill 1, but Mushroom Hill 2 I'm still not happy with because I feel like there's too much potential there that's lost. It's hard to explain, but I feel like I
Does the
could
weather
never
have
do the
something to do with
original.
it?
Kinda, but I feel like I never did the original layout justice for Act 2. That's part of my
Mm-hmm.
problem. That was always my like a thought in my head. I always wanted to do the original layout justice, and if I felt like mine was worse than the original, like by a significant margin, then I thought that I'd failed that. That the work should just be scrapped and started again. And this was sort of like my mentality with a lot of it. I know that, as you said, many sections went through large revisions, and sometimes I would just take a large section, clear it all out, save, and then start building it again from scratch, like keeping the start and end points of whatever they're connected up to it, but just redoing it because I wasn't happy with it. And it could have been any number of reasons. It could have been the object wasn't working the way I wanted to. I was like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to bother with this. It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could have just been the fact that I just generally was unhappy with it in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it happened more often than people, than you might realize. There were so many times where I was like, oh, this is working perfectly, and and then I left in things that I even look at now, and I'm like, I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
For example, Marble Garden 2 is a good example of that, actually.
Yeah.
The original idea was obviously, I wanted to have this section where you did the same small layout over and over until you realise that something wasn't quite right because you were just retreading the same ground. Then you
I
go,
distinctively remember this.
and you as a player would then go, I should probably try something different. And if it was a case of just jumping out of the loop in the wrong way, oh look, now you actually managed to progress. And on paper, I thought this was a clever idea. In testing, I thought it was a really good idea. I loved the idea. I left it in the final game. But then in the final game, I just get people literally doing the same thing over and over, 5, 6, 7 times, getting time over, and then literally going, this level layout wasn't tested. I'm like, well, actually, on the contrary, it was tested more than you even would ever think to know. But you're not picking up on the visual cues that I've added, which is arrows pointing to tell you to jump one way or the other. And you see these as clear as day every time you go around that loop, but you're just ignoring them. And to me, that was enough, because obviously I developed the layout. But and that's the reason why, those changes were made with future versions of the project. Obviously, I'm talking about the DA Garden Edition mod for Sonic 3 Air. But that's that happened a lot later. But yeah, this is an example of something that even as far as up to the original launch, I wasn't happy.
It's kind of ruined the game. Because the people just gave up there and they never got to play the other layouts.
Yeah, that was part of my problem, and that's one of the things I wanted to address with the mod. It was the first thing I wanted to do is make sure that people could sit and enjoy it from start to finish. That was always the intention. That was always the goal of the project, was to fulfill the idea that I had in my initial discussion with Jay back in 2009, that I was going to make a project with Sonic 3 and Knuckles where you could play from start to finish with new layouts. It never had been done before. That was the goal, and I wanted to ensure that I hit that goal, regardless of how long it took. And I will admit that towards the latter end of that project, where I had 2 or 3 zones left and the rest of them I was happy with, it's 2015, and the project was basically going to be released that year. I needed something as a bit of a kick up the backside, as they say, because I turned around and said, I've been working on this project now for almost 6 years, and I just want it released.
Yeah.
So that push to get that done, I thought, what better way to do that than to ensure that this project is released for the hacking contest that year, which is what I did. So I said that I'm going to release it for the hacking contest, which means I've now given myself 3.5 months to get these 2.5 levels finished. They have to be done. They have to be done now for the deadline. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. I'm also finishing university this year, and I want to get this done as well, to know that that's finished and my university work is finished at the same time. And it just felt like I could get closure on everything in one go.
Geez, I mean, if I were in your shoes, I probably would have just said, you know what, to hell with the hack. I'm going to focus on college.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I was at university. I'd finished my last work, and I remember looking at it and going, I've just submitted my last assignment, and everything at university is now completed. It's all out of my hands now. And this was in May of 2015. And then I was just looking back at what's it called, sort of like what the state of the project was, when the contest deadline was, which was obviously in October of that year. And I was just like, okay, so I've got May, June, July, August, September, October, 5 months. Awesome. I can definitely get this project finished in a working state and released in 5 months. Not a problem, because I've only got 2.5 zones to do. One of the zones is already half done. All I need to do is finish it. And one of the last ones, again, that I was having problems with was Mushroom Hill Zone 2. And I think that was in revision 3 at that point. I was just like, I'm still not happy with this. So I made the really terrible decision of about a week before the contest deadline to scrap Mushroom Hill Zone 2 and start again with a week left.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Seriously.
I literally turned around to myself and goes, no, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to scrap it. And I looked at it and I thought, why am I giving myself a week to do this? This is a bad idea. But no, I did it. I did it in a week, and I was happy that it was finished. I was just like, you know what?
That's good, but still.
Yeah, I won't put those restrictions on myself again, though, because that week was incredibly stressful. And like I said, I'm not happy with the layout still, because I know that I had to rush it. I know I rushed it for that 4th revision, and I really shouldn't have.
A 1 week deadline, jeez.
Deadline, yeah. Get Mushroom Hill Zone 2 from start to finish done.
But I mean, you did it in the end.
Yeah.
Still not entirely happy with it. You reached the deadline.
Yeah.
You did it.
I did reach the deadline, and then I released the project on the forums, and obviously I had to make a couple of revisions over the next month and a half. I remember having to do that. One of the main revisions was obviously people complaining about the invincibility music, because we don't need to talk about this. No, but I had to. So
No.
I had to make a
Yeah.
couple of revisions. One of them was a music issue, which I totally agree with. I can understand people's opinion on that.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
issue was an issue with the credits where I tried to add my own name in, and it just broke things on because I'd only been mostly testing it on Kaga Fusion as opposed to another competent emulator, which is my fault. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it was just mostly, and then it was a version 1.02a I released, which fixed like a really minor bug with something that caused it to crash on one specific emulator, and an issue with the big ring whereby when you came back from the special stage, the game basically soft locked. But you know that
Oh.
happens, and that was
Yeah.
worth fixing because obviously you know.
Was it like a door that had been opened by a switch? Go in this stage, come back, and the door's still
No, it was
closed. Or
more that the chunk that I'd used above, so underneath the big ring, didn't have any top or solid collision. So you literally fell into the chunk, and then you got stuck in the
oh
wall. You
right,
couldn't move
okay.
left to right. You were stuck. And I hadn't tested every big
Yeah.
ring for that instance. I tested most of them, but I thought, yeah, that'd be fine. And then looked at it in the editor.
The one you
Yeah,
don't check.
took it all, look at it in the editor, and went, "There's no solid collision on that chunk. Of course that's going to happen." Oh no! So it's like, right, I can either put collision in or I can move it. I'm just going to move it along. So I moved it like one chunk of thing along, and it fixed it. So
And no one noticed.
no one's ever commented on it. No, it was one big ring. It happened. Someone moves it. No one questions it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm tempted to go and try and find which one it is.
I mean, off the top of my head, I know exactly where it is in Lava Reef 2, but you know why I remember that, I don't know.
I want to talk about an interesting subject, which kind of might be related to your layout skills. I'm not entirely sure, but I wanted to talk about it. I'm right in understanding that you have is it a neurological disorder called dyspraxia?
Yeah,
Is it?
it is. Yeah, it's also in America called developmental coordination disorder. It's like a minor disability that I have, and I wasn't only aware of what it was called and the fact that I actually had it and had a name to put towards it. Funnily enough, when I was in college, at the age of 24, but before,
Because
you know,
I mean, I did search up on dyspraxia. I thought I'd do a bit of research, and it's amazing the amount of YouTube videos that I've seen where people have come on and spoken about it. And the thing I find really interesting is I'd watch all of these videos where they're talking about how their condition and how it affects their life, and they're only like 5 minutes long or something. And then we get to your video, because you did a video of this
I did,
on
yes.
YouTube. It was like 20 minutes long, and you went really in depth. If you'd like to go a bit more in depth now, I'm more than happy. If not, then people can watch the YouTube video. It's entirely up to you.
I mean, I don't mind explaining like how it affects me. I mean, I can give a bit of backstory as well. That's fine. So, growing up, my mum always knew that there was something slightly different about me. Not in a bad way, but she just noticed things.
Work, you retard! Sorry, I couldn't
No, no, it's
resist.
fine. But no, she noticed that things were different about me, and my mum's always joked that I never really had a teenage years growing up. She said of myself, my sister, my brother, I was always a kid until about the age of 13, where I became a young adult. I wasn't a teenager. I never had the teenage rebellious years. I never did anything that my sister and my brother did as teenagers. And she jokingly said, she goes, "You were one of the easiest kids I think anybody's ever had to raise over as a teenager because you never did anything that a teenager usually would do." But I don't really know how to take that. But that's just an example. But so that happened, and that was a thing. Obviously, growing up, my mum put it down to me being just clumsy or just a bit like, you know, just being a generally clumsy child. But then obviously when I become a teenager, I still got that clumsiness to me. It's a bit more apparent that maybe that's not it. But it wasn't until I became 16 and I first applied for a college, and I got it and dropped out very quickly. It's not really relevant, but as a result of that initial interview, they were asking me a couple of questions about why I was applying for the university and stuff, and I was answering them. And the woman just turns around to me out of the blue and says, "I think you have dyspraxia." And I just paused, and I
Wow.
was like, "What?" And she says,
But how,
"Yeah, yeah, yeah, this is what happened." So was very confused by this. I said, "Can you explain?" She said, "It's a neurological disorder that I have recently begun looking into, like researching because some of the other students have it, and I didn't know what it was. So I've researched it and I've looked into it." She says, "You're displaying symptoms of someone who has dyspraxia right now," and I was like, "I am," and she said, "Yes." She said, "Would you like to know?"
How
Yeah,
so?
I know. I wasn't too sure what she meant by that, but I said, She said, "Would you like to come back and talk about this as part of your initial interview?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. I'd happily love to sit and talk to somebody about it because I've never had anybody say anything."
Well, you're not going to say no. I don't want to know anything about
exactly,
it.
Yeah. That's exactly it. But I was intrigued, so I was like, "Yeah, okay. I'd definitely like to at least see what you have to say about it."
Yeah,
So
I would too.
So I came back 2 days later, and we just sat down, and she said, "This isn't anything to do with the interview. The interview's completed, and the application's been taken on board, and we'll get back to you in due time." She said, "But I'm just basically, because I'm learning this, I wanted to have just a small chat with you about some of the things that you might have experienced and you don't understand growing up, just to see if you do indeed have dyspraxia, as far as I'm aware." And that's what she said. I was like, "Yeah, okay." So she was asking me things like, "Have you ever been clumsy growing up?" "Yes." Are you generally clumsy in your life now?" I said, "But like, I have been at times, yes. It affects like my hand-eye coordination, my motor skills." So one of the key examples that people with dyspraxia are told is when you try and walk through a door and the door's open, do your shoulders sometimes still hit the door frame, even though that was not the intention? And my response is always, "That happens more often than I care to admit. And it's bloody annoying." But
So, like, there were these little signs that you just never really picked up on.
I never picked up on them. And obviously, I'm just like, yes, that's something that's affected me. She's like, "Do you hate the textures of certain types of food on your tongue?" I'm like, "What sort of question is that?" She's like, "So for example, I don't know." She says, "Pick a food you don't like," and I was like, "Peas. I don't like peas." And she's like, "Okay, do you dislike the taste, or is it the texture of that food on your tongue that you dislike?" I was like, "It's the texture. I cannot stand the feel of that food on my tongue." She said,
No, I get that.
She said, "That's another thing that I'm looking into." She said, "People with dyspraxia have that with more foods than other normal people." And I've got like a list of foods that I just cannot touch on my tongue. Can't do it.
Yeah.
It just makes me like, literally, my gag reflex immediately kicks in, and I'm like, no. And then it was like, are there certain foods with artificial colours that sort of like that you avoid because you know that you don't like the taste of them, or you don't like eating them? And I'm like, yeah, anything with yellow food colouring. And she's like, yeah, okay. And it's just like a long list of questions that don't seem to make any sense. But most of them I'm just answering yes to, because I'm like, yeah, this is just, why are you just basically describing me?
Yeah. They're kind of creepy.
Oh, it gets to, yeah. It's like, I'm like, "How do you know so much about me?" She's like, "I don't." She goes, "I'm just asking you questions of what a general person with dyspraxia would suffer from."
Yeah.
I'm just like, "Oh my lord, this is weird." So she's telling me, so I'm like, okay. So she's like, she goes, "The fact that you answer so many questions as, this sounds like you. We'd like to do some more proper testing to see whether you do have dyspraxia, but we can't do it at the college. It has to be done privately, and it's going to cost you money." And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, well, I don't have the money.
Yeah.
I'm a college student. So I said to her, I said, "I appreciate the fact that you've told me that you think I have it." I said, "But at least then that gives me something to look
exactly.
into."
It's a clue into who you are, and
Yeah. So I honestly go home and I tell my mum this, and my mum's just looking at me with her jaw dropped when I was telling her this stuff. She's like,
so that's it. Like,
"We never expected that this is all symptoms of something that you have." So she's now interested, and she starts looking into it as well. And she turns around to me like a couple of weeks later. She starts asking me a couple of questions, and she's like, does this happen? Do you suffer from this? Does this happen to you as some dyspraxia?" I'm like, yes. She goes, "I never knew." And I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "I didn't know these, no." She goes, "I looked them up, but I'm just surprised." I'm like, "I'm sorry, but that's just how it is." But like, the thing is as well, like with dyspraxia, like I said, is a neurological disorder. It usually affects motor skills and hand-eye coordination, but it also affects, the best way to describe this is the signals from your brain to the rest of your body.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. So the signals my brain sends to the rest of my body sometimes don't get received the way that they're sent. So, for example, if I send the number 7, say, this is a really terrible example, but it will do. Say, for example, my brain sends the number 79 to, say, my arm. My arm might receive the number 80 or the number 78.
Yeah.
It's a rough approximation. It's not exact, but it's my arm goes, okay, here's that signal, and does something to it. And most of the time, it's close enough that it'll do. But then other times, it's not. So, for example, when it comes to like spatial awareness, for example, when it comes to door frames, my brain says, if you walk forward now, you'll be fine. Your body won't hit the wall, hit the door frame. So I walk forward, and my shoulder hits the door frame.
It's slightly sort of unaligned.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it feels like, a misalignment with certain things in my life that I sort of am so used to now that I don't think much of it. But this also explains my general mood as well, because I've been known in my life with like my friends and my family as quite flat when it comes to my emotion. Like, I don't get overly excited, I don't get overly angry, I don't get overly sad. It's mostly like an average emotion, which I think is just normal emotion, as I call it to myself, just to be able to reaffirm myself, But it's not. It's more like that's just my neutral state. But then I get called out on it when something dramatic happens, and I don't respond the way people usually expect other people to respond to.
Well, did you appreciate that?
Yes, that's a good example. Did you appreciate that? And I just go, yes. But because I don't look happy and I don't sound happy, people don't know how to take that. And it's not that I'm being negative, because I'm not. I'm actually being very positive. In my head, And it's the same.
My brother has a similar thing. He's just got this face that looks like a slapped ass. It's just it's just like he looks like miserable all the time, but he's not. He's all right. He just looks miserable.
Yeah. It's that combined with all the other things as well. So, like, for example, when I was at my granddad's funeral, for example, and I'm upset, I'm not crying, I'm not showing that I look sad, but obviously in my head it's really hard for me to take, and I'm just sat there in quiet on my own in my own thought. And I had like my brother turn around to me and was like, "Why aren't you upset?" I'm like, "I am upset." Like, "Oh, well, you look the same as you always do." I'm like, "What am I supposed to look like in this situation?" Like, I don't understand like how I'm supposed to. You expect me to look like you know what I mean? I don't understand. To me, that's just a bizarre thing to say. A bizarre.
You missed an opportunity. Yeah. You should have just bawled out crying, landed in his arms, and just made a big scene in front of him, so he wished he'd never asked.
Yeah, but it's an example. You know what I mean? It's like that's usually what happens when I get overly excited. I will say to somebody, "This is awesome, thank you." That's about the extent of which you'll get from me. In my head, I could be going, "Oh my god, what the hell?" But I won't say that. I won't like publicly display that, and that's part of it as well. Like, I feel like I don't know what it is. It's like I don't feel like the need to express that via my face, via my facial expressions, via my actions, rather than I'm allowed to think it, but that's as far as it needs to go.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I did notice, and I'd noticed it before, but never really quite cogged on, is you take a very long time to type a response, and I just assumed, well, some people aren't very good at typing. I'm not going to judge, but I didn't really put two and two together that you had dyspraxia. It just never really registered. But I'm assuming that's related.
Yeah, well,
and then
dyspraxia is obviously kind of hand-eye coordination. So I didn't exactly pick the best profession to be working in, or the best thing to have a hobby in when it came to keyboards.
Well, this is it. This is where I'm getting into the grips. This is why I wanted to bring this up, and because you make these layouts.
Yep.
You're placing objects very carefully, and I'm wondering, do you feel that maybe part of the reason why your layouts tend to be quite tight and quite crafted well? I mean, are you doing them relatively slow, considering to maybe someone else might do them? And, is your dyspraxia might be a cause for that? And if so, do you think that because you're doing things slowly and you're placing them slowly, that you might be thinking 3 steps ahead?
I mean, I mean, you're right. When it comes to level layouts, I do take a lot of time. I mean, obviously, when I gave myself the deadline for the last week of production of DA Garden Edition to
Yeah,
create one layout, I said to myself, that can be done. I know it can be done.
yeah,
I have created a layout in a much smaller time beforehand without even thinking about it. Well, I'm in the right mentality, in the right state, and I'm just in the zone of working on it, then obviously I can get that done pretty quickly. But yeah, telling myself I have a week to do it was quite, a week and a half is a dangerous thing, I think, that I did to myself. And it worked out, of course. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, because I, because of my dyspraxia and my hand-eye coordination issues, that are associated with it, typing for me isn't as simple as most people now. If you ever watch somebody type on a keyboard, they use all the fingers on their hands, don't they? You obviously, use your thumb on the key, on the space key, and you keep your fingers in a rough
yeah,
position where you just sort of roll your fingers up and down as you're typing. I do what's called finger typing because of that, which means I only ever type on my
two
keyboard with
fingers, like one on each.
my
Yeah,
two index fingers. That is the only two fingers I use for typing. That's it. So I have to literally move my fingers around all across the keyboard, knowing roughly where they are to type things. But the other part of the problem with that is when I make a spelling mistake, I then go back and correct it, and I can't type with text speak, with leet speak, or whatever it is. I can't. I have to type in
yeah,
full sentences with punctuation, which is the way I type everything. Even in text messages, which annoys some of my friends because they're like, "Why don't you just say like okay as a response, like okay all in lowercase?" I'm like, "Nope, can't do that. Have to respond properly
yeah.
with a sentence, and I have to type it out, and I have to reread it back before I press the send key to ensure that what I've written
Makes sense.
actually makes sense and is exactly what I want to say."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's another part of dyspraxia. I feel like I can type. Typing takes time, but I can type what I'm actually thinking and feeling a lot better than I can say it.
yeah.
Which
And
is why sometimes when this has happened at university and at college actually, I've written work like assignments, dissertation, and stuff, submitted them, and I've had lecturers ask me whether or not this was plagiarized by somebody else because they couldn't believe that I'd written it,
yeah,
which I think was hilarious because obviously I could prove that it was mine, and I did both times, and they were like, "I'm sorry that I doubted that, but it's just you don't talk the same way that you type
no,
your
because you're
text."
giving yourself time to think about the words you're typing
Yeah,
as you're typing them.
yeah.
This is the reason why I want, like, is it the same with layouts? When you make a layout, is the same sort of thing?
It is, yeah, because with layouts, obviously there's nothing to stop me from immediately going, "That's wrong. I can correct it straight now." Whether it's the wrong chunk I've placed, or whether an object is slightly off.
Yeah,
And the thing with objects as well is, like most editors have like the ability to snap to a grid of 8 by 8 pixels, 16 by
yeah,
16 pixels, or so on. That feature is so important to me. Like don't understand how you'd make a layout without it. Because the amount, when people do freehand and they just drag a little spring and go, "That'll do," I'm just like, the first thing I do is cringe because it's like,
yeah.
no, that should be snapped to flush against the wall and the floor you've put it on.
The OCD side of me kind of needs to use the snap into grid, and with monitors, sometimes I forget, but you got to move it down 1 pixel. It's really annoying. It's
Yeah.
just, grrr.
Sonic 1 and 2 you do, yes. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, monitors are now flush with the floor,
Yeah,
which is somewhat helpful. But obviously, when it comes to things like flooring, which is uneven, and trying to put
a set of
an object on
spikes
that,
or yeah,
yeah, you have to then obviously consider the flooring and what looks right as opposed to what is statistically right.
especially if it's a level with grass. Sometimes you
Oh
can end up with like
yes.
1 pixel from the grass underneath like a rock or something, and it's annoying to look at. Just whoops.
Green Hill Zone has that a lot.
Yes, I've noticed.
Yeah,
Luckily, you don't see it on a CRT screen very often. So
no, but there is that. Yeah, in like
yeah,
a modern emulator where you can see every single pixel, you can see the odd pixel of incorrect placement on
and
spikes
even
and
like
things like that. It's
Green Hill Zone's like background, the mountains, and just like
yeah,
it's so wrong, but you'd never notice in the original game
yeah.
on a yeah.
But yeah, the other reason why I did that video on YouTube regarding dyspraxia as well was because I did research of my own into dyspraxia, like you did. And I was looking for videos and I wanted to see what people's other experiences were, whether they matched up with mine, whether I'd experienced, whether it was a strong form of dyspraxia, whether it was a minor version. I had no idea. All I knew was I might have had dyspraxia at the time. So to me, it was like I just wanted to know more about what that was.
Yeah.
And then I got diagnosed in my second year of college because, well, for two reasons. One, I was applying for universities, and
Yeah.
I was told that if I had a disability, that would make my life easier. And that sounds really weird, but I can kind of see where they were coming from because I was talking to a disability advisor saying, I think I might have dyspraxia. I've applied for university. If I have a disability, if this can be confirmed, that would make my life easier because I'd have access to more funding. I'd have access
Yeah.
to more resources. I don't want to make it more difficult on myself having a disability where they're not aware of it and I don't get the proper help that I might need. Now,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to don't want to sound selfish saying that either, but
No. 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 No.
the
No.
college agreed with me. They said if you do indeed have dyspraxia, we don't want that to be a cause for you applying for university, going to university, and then dropping out because you can't handle it because you haven't got
But I
the
mean, that
resources you
already
need.
happened.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that to happen. So that's why the college was like, yeah, what we'll do is we'll get somebody in to diagnose you to see whether you do have it. So I had to sit down
Yeah.
with this woman twice a week for about 3 months, and we went through questionnaires and did some tests and some surveys, and then we did some some physical activities with hand-eye coordination and motor skills, and
Did they put you on the little crane machine? You know,
no,
in the
no,
arcades where the little whoop 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 whoop.
no, no.
Yeah, if you can get the teddy bear.
It was more funny enough. They brought in one of those children's toys, the block toys with different shaped holes in the top.
Oh yeah.
And they give you the different color blocks that's supposed to fit in them.
Did you do what that one guy did when he got the little ball thing with the shapes, and he put every single shape in the square one?
I've seen
And
the
it all-
video, yes. But no, it was more about it was like that, but it was a bit more complicated. So some of the shapes were like seven-sided stars and stuff.
Yeah.
Like a star with 7 points. And then there was like another one which was like a hexagon, but with like an extra point at an extra circle bit at the corner.
So it can only
With
go in one
corner.
particular. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just the shape, but it's also the axes. It has to
Yeah.
go in only one particular way. Yeah.
So they bought this. She bought this in, and she's like, "Right." She goes, "I'm going to tell you the shape." And they had numbers on them, and there was a list of there was a chart which converted the numbers to names. And it's like, if I tell you the number, that converts to the name. You then find the shape and you put it in the box. But it was the fact that I found this so incredibly difficult, and I shouldn't have. I remember looking at it, going, "This is really easy." And the test, I was just scratching my head, going, "I don't quite understand this. Why am I struggling with this?" And then it was even the action of actually putting it in the block into the thing. I was like, I don't quite understand how this is supposed to go in. It
Yeah.
wasn't because it was like mentally challenging. It was just I physically couldn't get it in. I was like, I don't quite. And then obviously at the end, it's showed me how it went in. I was like, oh, okay. It sort of gives you like an explanation, and it kind of makes sense when you're told the explanation, but not until you know it. You're like, oh, right, that makes sense. Yeah, of course, I approached it wrong. Don't worry about it.
Sure, that must be kind of like annoying because after they show you, you think, oh, I feel like an idiot. You know.
Yeah, of course. That's the thing. It's like, oh, well, so why didn't I get that in sooner? Why
Yeah.
was that such a challenge? But that test, the testing that I had at the college, that resulted in me getting a document back, which was 21 pages long. I know it sounds ridiculous. Yeah, 21 pages long. And it
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Stop. Can I just? So this is like there's a condition. It's a phobia. It's a phobia of long words.
Yeah.
And the name of the phobia is a really, really long word.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So what they've basically done to you is said, well, we know you've got a neurological disorder that is, makes things difficult for you. We're going to hand you a huge document. Well, what is this document?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, like with dyspraxia, it's like I don't have the same issues that people would say with dyslexia do. So reading isn't too much of a problem.
Oh no, I
It's
wasn't
just
saying about reading. I was just
no,
saying,
I'm just saying,
yeah,
yeah. But I'm just clarifying that it's not like if I was to write something down with a pen on paper, that is actually a really difficult action for me to do.
yeah.
I've always struggled with that. That's why typing to me is so much easier because even though it takes just as long,
It's
I'm
still a
happier
fraction
being
of
able
the
to,
time.
and it doesn't hurt my hand doing so as well because
Yeah,
it actually causes me physical pain because I grip the pen too hard to write down on paper. Like I cause myself physical pain doing it, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. It's just my brain says you have to hold the pen harder, otherwise it will fall out. So they gave me this document that was basically the results of all the tests that I'd taken and
yeah.
questionnaires and stuff. And the most important part was obviously the last page, which says, it's basically to summarize, because they can't say it the way you'd expect them to say it, but it goes, as a result of the outcomes of the tests undertaken in the previous 20 pages, and of my analysis of you as somebody of the blah 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 body that diagnose neurological disorders in people, I have come to the conclusion that it is
Yeah.
very likely that you suffer from developmental coordination disorder known as dyspraxia. And it is my recommendation that you benefit from any of the benefits that are allowed to anybody that suffers from disability coordination disorder, i.e., dyspraxia. And
It
that,
sounds like they
yeah,
got lawyers in there to
yeah,
write
yeah.
that
But that
specifically.
last
Yeah.
sentence was all I was ever wanted. I wanted something to confirm that
Closure.
maybe there was a name to all this that I was suffering from, and that maybe if there was a name, was that name relevant to
Yeah.
me and what I was suffering from? And it wasn't that throughout my whole life I was aware that something was wrong with me or whatever, but my mum was. And to me, it was just like I just adjusted as best as I could to that situation. And looking back, I think, well, yeah, I can see why that might have been harder for me. But it was not like that ever held me back. So, but it was nice to get that confirmation on that piece of paper that then I could turn around to the university when I was applying and say, the college have got this evaluation done. They say that I have dyspraxia. What do you think? And the university go, yes, you do. I'm like, yeah, perfect, done.
And it's also the case of if somebody asks, like, yeah, hey,
Yeah.
why do you seem to nudge your shoulder into the frame all the time? You can explain it in pretty much a one-word sentence, to explain your condition without, before it probably would have taken you like multiple sentences to say, well, I seem to have trouble. No, you can just say dyspraxia. It's not you're not going to convey the full experience, but at least it's,
Yeah, it gives them something to look up and go, oh, okay, that explains
yeah.
it.
You don't have to go too in depth.
No, I can give them that word, and there you go. That's enough for them to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it seems to me that it's become a slight two-edged sword in a way. That there's quite a bit of negative to it, but there are some positives that come out of it, and I think laying out objects might be one example of that, and structuring your sentences. It might be slow, but you seem to do it more professionally.
I mean
Do you
that's.
think that?
I will take any advantage I get from it. If I'm being honest, I mean to me,
Yeah,
it's not. It's nice to get like a diagnosis to confirm that some of the things that I've had trouble with growing up, or even now in my life, like I've got
yeah,
something I can put it all to. But at the
yeah,
same time, it's not like I ever went looking for it. And
yeah,
it's not like I never really considered those to be like my challenges growing up to be anything different than anybody else's. To me, it was just that's growing up. That's how things can be. That's how they were for me. And when I'm then told different, I'm like, actually, oh, okay, so maybe that's not normal, but I don't know what normal is. So to me,
yeah,
it's like, oh, why would I consider it any different?
yeah. No, it's just something I wanted to ask as well. It was
Yeah, of
more
course.
curiosity because I wondered if it would play a role, and I'm thinking, yeah, I guess it does,
It probably does, yeah.
at least to a small degree. What I want to go back to, you mentioned Thorn earlier.
Yes.
I mean, obviously he came to work on the S Factor, Sonia and Silver, and you've kept in
Yeah.
touch with him. I mean, is he working on
Yes.
any projects or like I don't know.
Um, I don't quite know what he's working on himself. I know that I
I
saw.
I mean, say
I mean, obviously, I can. give some context into the DA Garden Edition mod very quickly as well. I mean, that's worth talking about.
Well, this is because you mentioned his name earlier, and you mentioned you wanted to come back to him. So I wanted to clarify what you meant by that.
So what I can do is I can sort of jump forward a little bit and then come back afterwards. So in 2019, 2020. So yeah, last year I decided that I was going to make the public source, make the source of Sonic 3 DA Garden Edition public.
Okay.
Because a lot of other ROM hacks have started to do that. They go, here's the source, you can use it in any way, shape, or form you see fit to do so.
Okay, yeah.
I thought, you know what, I've got this disassembly lying around that I've finished 5 years ago. I'm not working on it anymore. Surely if anybody wants to continue on it or do something with it, then they're more than welcome to. So why not, see what happens. So I put it out there and thought literally nothing of it. I've put it out there and said, here you go, if you want to download it, do something with it, go nuts. I left it for a week, and I came back and I found that I had about 4 questions, and all those 4 questions were, have you considered porting this to Sonic 3 Air? So every single one of them I replied, no. For these 3 reasons, 3. Reason the first, I don't have any understanding of what this .lemon code is that Sonic 3 Air uses, so the answer is no, I'm not learning that. Number 2, I'd have no idea how to then adjust things further to work with the fact that Sonic 3 Air by default is widescreen, so I ain't doing that. Number 3, even if I did port it, I wouldn't play it. I have no interest in playing the project anymore in a new engine that's just widescreen. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, the disassembly is public. If you want to get somebody else to do it, you want to get a team together, you want to work on it, and port it to Sonic 3 Air, go for it. So I left him to it.
And I'm assuming this is where Thorn comes in.
Well, technically. Beforehand, there was a guy who started doing 1 or 2 of the levels as a proof of concept. So he's like, I've managed to get Marble Garden 2 from your ROM hack working in Sonic 3 Air, I think it was, or something. He goes, here it is working. There's some issues with the fact that the hack doesn't accommodate widescreen fully, but that would require me to rework some of the level sections a little bit and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that, but this is just a proof of concept to prove it's possible, and it didn't take me that much to do. I was like, okay, great. If you want to work on it, go nuts. Like I said, it's public now, so everybody, if you want to help this guy out, feel free. I thought that was the end of it. I left it. Then literally about might have been a couple of weeks after that, I got a message on Discord from Thorn saying, oh, by the way, I've been working on porting it to Sonic 3 Air too. And I was like, okay. I said, well, why did you? He goes, well, I've been looking at Sonic 3 Air and making the odd mod for it and the code behind it. I just thought, yeah, it'd be something interesting to try and do. But, he's like, I've got X amount of zones already working. I've adjusted the level outs to fit the fact that it's widescreen. Doesn't seem overly difficult to do. I'll let you know when it's done. Okay, sure. A little while later, he comes back to me and goes, yeah, I've got the first version out. It's on Game Banana. You can download it as a mod. Give it a go and tell me what you think. So I did. I downloaded it, and it was just literally the level outs adapted to work with Sonic 3 Air. And it was great. I thought, this is actually really cool. I like this.
And nothing's broken.
Nothing's broken. It seems to be that, the level outs are imported and they work fine. There's a couple of small adjustments to accommodate the fact that the screen is wider, so the boss areas are made a little bit larger in places, or things have been moved around just to fit the screen limitations.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's mostly pretty much verbatim, almost 1-to-1 from the original ROM hack, but ported over. And I thought, that's amazing. I said to Thorn, I goes, was there any problems in finding the code that I had changed? Not much of it, but
yeah.
He said, funnily enough, because you commented every single line you changed, it was easy to find. He said, nearly every line you changed, you added, and I quote, DA Garden changed, was blank, now blank. And that's what I did.
See, comments are important, ladies and gentlemen.
All I had to do is put in your name, DA Garden, into the disassembly. It come up with, say, 27 results. For each one of these, I literally took it, converted it to lemon code, and put it into Sonic 3 Air.
Nice.
I had to make a few adjustments in a few places, but most of the time it was just a case of port it over, it works. There was a few that also weren't commented, but I found them quite easily, he said, because you have a way of indenting things that made it quite simple to find that too. I was like, oh, well, that's convenient. So, yeah, and I thought that was going to be the end of it. I thought that was the end of the project. It had been ported. It's now a mod. People can play it. Until about a month later, in
Yeah.
which case Thorn releases the next version, and he says to me, I've made some more improvements. I'm like, okay. He goes,
Improvements. Okay.
I'm interested to know. He goes, I've made some new palette changes here, here, and here. I've updated this. I've changed this. Small little bits and pieces at this point. But he's like, I just wanted to make it a bit more of a completed experience. Because he said, obviously, you've changed 3 or 4 palettes. They're quite nice. But the rest of them are the default palettes. I thought they could do with being a bit spruced up a bit.
Okay. All right.
I was okay, fine. At that point, I've got no problem with that. And he said, he goes, I do have a question to ask. I'm like, yeah. He says, I want to make some more changes to it because as a base mod to work from, it's quite easy to sort of take it, make it into something new without, and I don't have to change too much to do that.
How did you feel about that? I mean,
I said to him, I goes, well, I can't. I said, I don't really mind because I have made it public. The source is public. It's up to you now. If you want to make something of this. Like, I don't mind. I've got no problem with it whatsoever. I was like, so to me, it's a project I've completed and finished. But if you're finding enjoyment in making more with it, now that I've made it public, then go nuts with it. I was like, the only thing I'm going to ask, if you don't mind doing, is please don't remove the name DA Garden from it. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm asking because it's still based on my ROM hack.
Yeah.
All I'm asking is if you could just keep my name in. I appreciate that.
I don't think that's
all I'm asking.
Too much to ask. I mean, you've worked on it for 6 years, for crying out loud.
Yeah, exactly. So of course Thorn said, yeah, not a problem. He said to be honest, he said my problem originally with making these sort of changes that I'd already made was that you might have a problem with it. He said, so most small changes I don't think I'll run by you, but anything I feel is big enough that would warrant me checking to make sure it's still in the spirit of the original project, I will run by you first. I said, I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, that's very kind of him. Yeah.
So that's what's happened. So pretty much since then, for about the past 18 months or so that he's been working on it, he will just come to me randomly and go, I want to make this change. What do you think? Or I'm going to be making this change. Could you just let me know with this preview version and tell me whether you approve it? If you do, it'll go in. If you have a problem with it, let me know and we can discuss it. Most of the time, I'd say about 99% of the time, I've said it's fine. The title card changes, fine. The what's it called? The difficulty modes I approved of, and to be honest, I loved the fact that he added a new difficulty mode for Knuckles. Absolutely fantastic. You know what I mean? Small things like that. I'm like, if you can come up with a difficulty mode for Knuckles, a new one that actually makes it more challenging, but it's still the same ROM hack, go for it. And he did. I was like, yeah. He's got some more ideas that I think he's going to be like implementing in the future. But like I said to him, I don't mind them. They already sound interesting enough to me that they're still within the spirit of the original game. And I've told him the ideas that I would have loved to have implemented, but didn't have the skills to do. And he's already taken some of those on board as well.
Oh, so it's kind of like a director's cut in a way, then.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, the idea of Knuckles having a harder mode was always there from the beginning, but it's just I didn't know how to make it harder.
Yeah.
Now he's added in the egg robos, added a bit more story to it, a bit more like, change the layouts a bit so the enemies load for Knuckles, but not other characters. Stuff like that, I'm perfectly on board with. Because if I could have done it myself, I would have done.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I will say as well is recently somebody turned around to Thorn and said, is there a way to disable the custom title cards you've added and just put back in Sonic 3 without the DA Garden Edition moniker? And Thorn just went flat out to him and said, no, I can't do that. The guy said, well, why? He goes, it's just Sonic 3 Air. And Thorn said, the mod is Sonic 3 DA Garden Edition. It was built on DA Garden's original ROM hack. I want to keep his name there because I said I would.
Too right.
He said, you're playing the mod based on his ROM hack. You put up with the fact that his name is on the title card.
Yeah.
That's it. He said, I can't do that. He goes, I refuse to do that. He goes, if you want to... He said to him, the guy, he goes, there's nothing stopping you making your own mod that changes it back to the original. He said, but I wouldn't endorse it.
No.
And I said, I appreciate you saying that. You don't have to say that. You could have turned around and said, yeah, just change this and done. But he didn't. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. I appreciate him doing that. I'm not... Like I said, I don't have much say in the development of it going forward.
Mm-hmm. No, but
But
it
it's
is
nice to know
nice.
that.
It's yeah.
But it's nice to know that he's building something of it, and also the fact that every now and again I do get someone go, "Oh, these layouts are amazing. Who developed this?" And Thorn goes, "Not my work." Thorn goes, "Speak to the A-Garden." So I'm like, "Hi guys," and they're like, "You made this?" I'm like, "Yes, I made this. It was released in 2015 as a ROM hack, not as a mod for Sonic 3 Air." I was like, "But that's my layouts there, yes."
I mean, like when you make something open source and you're saying to the world, "Look, do what you want with it." I mean, it is nice that somebody who does take it and does what they want with it, they do it in a respectful way. I mean, they didn't have to, but he did, and that's really quite, yeah.
That's exactly it, and that's why I have the utmost respect for what he's doing with the project. Like I know that if he's working on it, the project's in safe hands with somebody like that.
Yeah,
And I've worked with Thorn before on S Factor where he's made level outs at the same time I've made level outs for the same zone but different acts.
yeah,
And we've talked about that sort of stuff before. So I know what sort of quality his work is. I know, and I know
yeah.
sort of person he is and what he's worked on before. So I know that it's in good hands. I have full faith that he's not really going to ever implement anything that I'm going to go, why did you do that?
Yeah,
Most of the
yeah,
time,
yeah,
it's going to
yeah.
be a case of if I have a question, I'll ask him and go, okay, could you just explain this change to me? And he'll explain it. I go, perfect, got it. I'm not even going to question it any further because you just explained it.
There's a deep level of
But
trust
that's
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's over time. That's what I've got that we've established without even saying anything to each other about it. You know what I mean? It's just,
No, that is absolutely that's amazing, almost symbiotic in a way. I mean, what's the progress of that so far?
I mean, obviously, I mean,
I don't
last
want to
time I
ruin it,
looked.
but you know what I mean.
No. I mean, last time I looked, I just know that like the last version that was released and updated had some more quality of life changes, some updates to the layouts further. There's an extra section added to Marble Garden Act 1, which
Uh-huh.
kind of makes sense. And he's also fixed, as he puts it, and I agree, some of the backtracking that I've sort of implemented unintentionally.
The
So
modern
obviously, when
garble,
you
the
like,
marble garden
no, well,
loop.
well, yes, he's fixed that. That's the thing. He fixed that a while ago.
Yeah.
So now you only go through the loop force once. When you come through the loop a second time, something has been forced to change.
Oh, that's nice.
So things like that. But yeah, it's now a much more fluid experience from start to finish. And it's just small things like quality of life changes and improvements that should have been there. Like if you finish a certain boss as like the upper boss of Marble Garden Zone 2 as Sonic, you run into the stage of Carnival Night as opposed to being flown in by Tails
Yeah.
because you defeated the different boss. Small things like that I think
Little
make
neat
it
touches.
much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, little touches that are required to sort of make it look like that higher quality of finish as opposed to before where it just looked a bit janky. So yeah, but no, I am looking forward to the future progress of it and what else he does with it. Because every time that he's done a major update, I've just been surprised by it. I mean, for example, implementing the Sonic Mania Blue Spheres behavior with green spheres into Sonic 3 Air just for the ROM, just for the mod. It's like, what? Why have you've
Yeah,
implemented
yeah, yeah.
just for that? Well, that's crazy. He's like, yeah, but I have because I felt like it warranted it, and I'm like, that's such dedication to something that I don't understand, but I have the utmost respect for. So
He is a pretty cool dude. If you've ever played some of his projects in the past, I mean, like Retro Remix, I mean that was different to any other hack we've ever had at its time. He really is very, very expert at these kind of things.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like that's why I think at this point I have
He
no
likes to experiment.
issues. Yeah, at the same time, like like the work is always very solid to a high standard.
Yeah.
That's why I have no reservations whatsoever about the progress of the mod, like at all.
No, that's really amazing. Hopefully we'll have a good play of that when there's a final release, and it'll be really exciting to replay your layouts again in that and see what extra nook and crannies Fawn has put into that. We're going to take another break. We're just going to play something a bit more Christmassy, seeing as it's feeling Christmassy. So a bit of Sonic 3D's Diamond Dusk will go down quite well. Back in Back in a moment. And that was, well, pretty obvious. Sonic 3D, Diamond Dust Zone by Richard Jakes. I think that was Act 1. I like the bells at the end there, but I remembered on YouTube I searched up the music, must have been a few years ago, and went to the comments and somebody put in block capitals, Christmas! Just because of the bells. It's just like, it's obvious.
I mean, the influence is quite obvious, yeah.
Yeah. It's the jingle bells, I'm pretty sure. That's what makes it feel like Christmas. You know, I think, yeah, did a pretty good job there. This is right on point. Okay, so, moving back now, we were talking about Sonic 3D Air Garden Edition in Sonic 3 Air, and Thorn's involvement in that, and I want to move back a bit. Or not necessarily back a bit. I can't. You've come into the Sonic hacking community, and you've sort of seen, you know, the hacking process, and not just the hacking. There's also, you know, a lot of other things. I mean, you know, like Sonic Retro alone, they have all sorts of different discussions. It's not just hacking.
Oh yeah,
there's,
definitely.
you know, interviews. There's, you know, betas. There's even stuff that's, you know,
our main focus seems to be as well, obviously, the wiki. I mean, updating the wiki with information and history. So
yes,
sort of improving on that is what there seems to be a big focus, and obviously it makes sense to catalogue that. Yeah.
Are there any other communities that you've been involved with other than Sonic hacking? Like, have you looked at any of the other communities, like I don't know, like Namco or anything like that?
I'm looking. Let's have a quick look at my Discord list, for example. I mean, I watch a Twitch streamer quite regularly called 360 Chrism. He streams a lot of like Pokemon speedruns, Mario 64 speedruns.
Those are amazing.
Yeah, so I was watching. I've been watching this guy like on and off, mostly on YouTube for a long time. But for the last 18 months or so, I've just been watching him rather regularly on Twitch streaming. So I'm part of that Discord, and sort of get to know some of the other people who watch his stream and support him. And it's just been fascinating to me because I can't do speedrunning. It's not something I'm very good at. I've tried doing it in the past. I can speedrun, say, Sonic 1 or 2, and I could get a good enough time. But if it comes to anything else more serious or any other game, it's just like my skills are not there. But watching this guy like speedrun stuff like the new Pokemon game and getting like a ridiculous time on it, or Mario 64 speedrunning in general was quite fun. But watching him play these or do like different versions of them, like randomizers, for example, which is a big thing that sort of recently has come into, but people have been enjoying it really. And it's just fascinating to watch, and it's all usually rather relaxed as a community as well. Like everybody's quite nice and encompassing, and very rarely is there any drama of any kind. It's quite nice to sit there, watch a stream, and everybody in the chat's quite nice, and I mean, yeah, of course, like I'm subscribed, right? I will happily admit that I'm subscribed to the channel. I pay whatever the £4 or whatever it is a month to be a subscriber, but I still feel like I'm a part of the community, and if I just drop in the chat, for example, when it's on the stream and say hi, people are like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And I'm just like, "Hey," people acknowledge me and know who I am. It's nice.
You're like, "Hi, everybody, how you doing?" They're like, "Hi, Peaches Castle."
No, I
please tell me you called yourself Peaches Castle. You still DA Garden?
I'm still DA Garden. Yeah.
Oh, missed opportunity.
It's spelled slightly different because of Twitch. So it's DA as 2 letters _garden. So it looks like more like Da Garden, which is not.
You've been looking out that window again. The garden.
But it's interesting because nobody calls me DA. Everybody just calls me Garden.
Ah, that's interesting.
Chris, the streamer, calls me Garden. People in chat call me Garden.
But do they know the origin? I mean,
no, that's the thing. They don't. Like even though the user profile is Little Planet, they don't know where the origin is. So to them, I'm just Dag Garden, or Chris calls me my full name when I like donate anything to the stream. Like if I like donate 100 bits or whatever, he's like, "Oh, thanks, DA Garden." But otherwise, he just calls me Garden, and I'm fine with that because it's still me. It's still.
Well, I'm wondering if they might be like thinking like, maybe you're named after like the court garden in the back of the castle of Mario 64. Might be worth asking. I don't know.
I mean, I don't mind. Like to me, it's still like I don't mind because I get that in the Sonic community as well. Like I get called like DA Garden, DAG by some people, which I find interesting. But I mean, I don't mind. Like to me, it's an awkward name to abbreviate, and people usually seem to abbreviate names that are more than one syllable. So, for example, you're MarkeyJester, but I sometimes in my head just call you Marky, or even call you it directly, because it's just the shortened version of the same name, but it's clear who I'm talking to.
Well,
if people call me DA, it's fine because, as I said, DA is technically my first 2 initials of my name, so it's fine. I know who you're talking to. Oh, actually, that's a very funny story, and I would tell it because Overlord won't mind. I was on the train to the Retro Barcade recently.
Oh, the one just last week, I think. Yeah.
I was on the train, and I said, I'm on Twitter. I said, I'm on the train to the Retro Barcade. That's what I said. I'm on the train. Yeah. Overlord tweets me back and goes, "Are you on the same train that left Reading at blah 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 time?" And I'm saying this because these tweets are public. Yeah. And I tweeted, "Yes, I'm on that train. I'm on this seat near the window." And
is he like right next to you or something?
As a joke. No, I said it as a joke and thought nothing of it. 2 minutes later, I just see him in front of me. "Hi, DA." "Hi, Overlord. How are you doing?" He goes, "I went looking for you." He said, "I didn't take long." I was like, "That's so weird," but at the same time, it's bloody hilarious.
Welcome to the future.
We're just on the same train. So, yeah. But it was like, he referred to me as DA when he saw me, and I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's the only real other community, like, I'm a part of, is just that. I mean, I don't do much with other communities.
Yeah.
So like, what I mean by that is like, I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I don't comment. I sort of keep my comments to myself.
Yeah.
So I very rarely sort of comment on them. But I will watch content that people provide on YouTube. I'm more involved with like obviously Sonic Retro, SSRG, the Sonic Hacking Contest as a judge, obviously. And I'm a little bit involved. I do comment sometimes as well on the Sonic 3 Air Discord because obviously,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
the obvious
involved
reasons.
with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the project. Yeah, but that's about it really. There's not much else that I sort of do with regards to those communities. I mean, I do some more stuff in like, as they say, IRL, in real life,
Yeah.
that isn't online. Like I sometimes go to a board game club on certain Sunday evenings where
That's healthy. I mean,
I meet up with other people and we play board games in the pub. Like it's nice,
yeah.
stuff like that. Like that to me is great because it's something to break up the monotony of the general working week. So
Yes, person-to-person contact is, it's
yeah,
healthy.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's nice to sort of sit there, and it's just playing board games as well. There's nothing else. There's just sit
Yeah,
with people
just
you don't know, play a board
turn
game,
your phones off, put them away. We're playing a board game.
and that's exactly it. I quite like that to sort of break things up, and I sort of like to do that with my family from time to time as well. Like when I go spend time with my family, it's my mum, myself, my brother, my sister, the four of us, and we don't do so much now. But we used to play like Mario Party a lot.
Yeah,
So you'd all have to sit around a video game console with your own controller, but we're all sat around the same television, all sort of participating in the same game. So you put your phones away and your focus is purely on the video game.
yeah,
And sort of having that sort of time together as a family, I love that. That's the thing. Like that's probably one of the other things that I do outside of online with the Sonic community that I am so much a part of. Like
yeah,
I like to spend time with my family because I know that some people don't get on with their families very well, and but I'm very close with mine, and I'm lucky to have that because I like spending time with them. They like spending time with me, so it makes sense that if I come out, if I see them once a week, and we just sit and watch a film together for 2 hours, that to me is like time spent with people I like spending time with.
yeah. You
You
go
know.
in and you find that your mum's put up an Easter egg hunt for you. Just, just seriously,
I'm not.
it sounds like a
Yeah,
saint, and
yeah.
your family sound like a real sort of cool group to hang out with. They seem like real sort of
Yeah,
chill.
and the thing as well, like I was to go a little bit further with that is, I know, like I said, I know that some people don't have that. I, I sometimes find it hard to see how that could work with other people. Like some people say that they sort of struggle with getting on with all the members in their family, or meetups are a struggle because people don't want to spend time with each other, or they don't have common interests, so that's not there. But with my family, it's slightly different. Like I've always gotten on very close with my mum, definitely, but my sister, growing up, we were like basically at each other's throats all the time. But then, but that's fine
Yeah,
because by the time we got past our teenage years, we both like grew up a bit, and it was sort of like mutual understanding more than anything. And now we get on so well when we do see each other, and I'm glad that those issues that were like a petty squabble between siblings, and they're no longer an issue.
yeah.
I'm
You've
glad to have
matured.
that. That's what I mean. That's I don't do much outside the Sonic community unless it's like personal development to me, really. And I know that might sound a little bit selfish. I don't mean it to, but it's just like if I want to sit and watch play a Pokemon game, for example, for a bit on my own, I will. If I want to watch a film because it sounds interesting to me, I'll sit and watch it. But getting involved with other communities
Yeah,
isn't
you
something that.
need a break. I mean, like,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like sometimes as well, I feel like because I spend so much time in the Sonic community and and Sonic in general is such a big part of my life. Like in more ways than I can imagine. Like it influences so many things, but it's really hard to like sometimes switch that off. So that's why sometimes I just decide I'm not going to go online today. I'm just going to sit and watch a film and just be on my own, ignore my phone if it
yeah,
goes off because it's
I
not important.
totally get what you mean with that, and I want to ask you a bit more about that actually. But I totally get what you're on about. I mean, I'm not part of many other communities, but I do like have an interest in things that are nothing to do with Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't get too involved with them, but I do. Like I would like watch some like who do I watch? Bumgardner restoration on YouTube because when he's restoring these paintings, it's really quite fascinating to me. I don't
Yeah,
comment or anything, but I am quite interested. It's nice, it's something to watch. It's different and it's quite
yeah.
intriguing. So I get it. I get what you mean, and it is nice to take a step back. But surely, and this is what I wanted to come back to, the stuff that's happened in the Sonic hacking community. How has that affected your life, your understanding of the is there anything that's useful that's come out of the hacking community that's benefited you in some way?
I mean,
Because Selby, for example, I think he mentioned in a thread once that the hacking community helped him to sort of speak English fluently and to be a proper, to pass. He's like a grades in school where he's passed, in his home country of Germany. But I was wondering, if your job has demanded something where the hacking scene, you being in the hacking scene and the stuff you've done has had some sort of influence on that. That helped out in some way
I mean,
or had a negative influence.
no, I mean, the only example of something I can think of with that regard is probably just something really. It's a little bit minor, but it has helped. Is my understanding of how hexadecimal works, for example. So obviously, before I did ROM hacking, I had no idea what it was or how any of it worked. And then obviously, I need to understand how it works with some of the simpler tasks when it comes to modifying Sonic One, for example.
Yeah.
But
Or even
yeah,
object
yeah,
IDs. I
exactly,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
But understanding how that mathematical system works and then how to edit it and change it, what that
Yeah.
does. I mean, I've had instances in work whereby we've had, for example, we're trying to create emails for a client or something, and we're having, the characters aren't coming through the right way because they're Unicode characters, but Unicode is in hexadecimal. So I'm looking at it and
Yeah.
going, okay, what does that character relate to based on this table? And I can read it and I can say it means that character. So we need to encode that character. And then everybody else at work looks at me and goes, how do you know that? I'm like, this is just hexadecimal. It's like if you know hexadecimal, this is quite easy to understand. But they look at
Yeah,
you,
if you know
yeah, but
the UTF
yeah,
format, or the Unicode format,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I mean.
If
So
you, yeah,
that's one of the ways I have used it. Is and that's been quite helpful in me. So progressing and fixing those problems quicker. Obviously, if I hadn't known them, somebody would have had to look it up and find out themselves. But it's just nice
yeah,
to know that has had like a little bit of a crossover. I mean, the other place as well probably is with beta testing, and just general testing of layouts and stuff, and like my attention to detail when I do testing. Because
yeah.
my testing methods are quite meticulous. They're quite I can be quite a different sort of mentality when I'm testing as opposed to developing. And then
Yeah.
when it comes to work, in my work, I sort of try and use the same sort of testing method. And I've been told as well by people I work with that it's quite obvious when I've gone in and thought from a testing perspective as opposed to developer's perspective. Like they've noticed that, and they said, "Yeah, we're glad you have thought of it from that perspective because it needed that extra level of thought that you've already put into it without us having to ask it." And it's small things like that that just sort of like it's nice to see that somehow reflects over in what I do. And obviously, anything to do with computers and their understanding is part of my job. But seeing that sort of
Transferable
yeah, exactly,
skills.
transferable skills.
Yeah.
There is as many as I would have thought, but there are enough there that it's quite clear as to why I work in the field that I do. I think.
What about negative influences? I mean, is there anything that you might think that would be like? I would have been better off if that hadn't have happened. Like that thing that happened in the computer has put me in a negative kind of like it's affected my life in this particular way, and it's had some benefits, but there's this negative thing about it. I wish it kind of didn't.
Uh, I mean,
I know it's a difficult question, and
no,
probably not,
but
but
it's a good one because I mean, there is something. I mean, sometimes getting known for being part of the Sonic community can have its problems in just as being part of it. I've seen this already, like before. I've seen people turn around and go, "I've gone, oh, I'm DA Garden. Okay, what community are you from? Oh, I'm a member on SSRG and Sonic Retro." And then I get people looking at you and go, "Oh, you're one of those Sonic fans, right?"
oh right,
And I'm just
yeah,
like, well, that's already a that's not fair to judge me immediately just because I'm a part of these communities. No, that's not.
Yeah.
But I've seen it. It's happened more times than I would have expected. Put it that way. As soon as you mention you're a part of these communities, it's like, oh right, you talk to these people, and it's like, well, yeah, I do. They're my friends. I've known them for years, but you're making out like that is already a barrier to us communicating further. Why is that? You know?
Yeah. Well, we haven't exactly done ourselves a favour. People have behaved in the scene in a very sort of reckless manner, and it kind of has put a negative light on things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I often don't tell people that I'm kind of a fan of the old Sonic the Hedgehog. I kind of not. I don't really. Never, very rarely does it ever come up in conversation, because I know for a fact that the person is immediately judging me.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, I get that as well, which is sometimes it can be a problem. I mean, anybody who
Yeah.
knows me personally, like my close friends, my family, they all know that I like Sonic as much as I do and how much of an impact it has on my life. But if it's anybody outside of that circle, unless they specifically ask or I specifically make it obvious, they don't. It's never really brought up. But when it is brought up, it's always the first question is why? Why are you still a Sonic fan? Why to that extent? And it's like, why should I have to
Yeah. So
why
well,
should I have to justify my interest and hobbies to you? That just feels like it's a bit. I'm not.
why are you
Yeah,
interested in anal beads? I don't know. It's like,
yeah. It's like why I'm not questioning your interests. It's
yeah.
like I don't understand why
You know.
it's something that I feel like I have to justify sometimes. But yeah, I mean I'm kind of used to it these days
Yeah.
as well. Like when I say like I'm a Sonic fan, people are like, oh, like yeah, but what about Mario? And it's always comparisons to something else, and it's you
Well,
know.
Mario's good. I like
Yeah,
Mario
I like
too. What's
Mario
your
as well.
point?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
you know.
That's exactly it. I do too, but it's not the same. It's deeper than that. The
Yeah.
history of me liking the franchise is much bigger than just that. You know.
Yeah. Um. There's one thing I would like to talk about. As I guess as a closing point here. You are working on a new project now,
I am, yes.
and it's it's kind of a project that you have already been working on, as I understand.
Yeah. So, as my history of working on projects goes, this project's been in development for quite some time. I did release a version of it in the 2019 hacking contest, a very
Mm-hmm.
early version of it where I hadn't bothered to sort of expand too much further out of my comfort zone. So it's mostly level layout changes and things like that you expect from me. And obviously,
Yeah.
that version wasn't negatively received, but I didn't get much positive feedback either. It was sort of like a lukewarm response, as it were.
Yeah.
And obviously,
But you're going into because you showed me some screenshots and I've seen some of the bits of the work you've been working on. You've actually been getting into art editing
yeah, yeah,
lately.
exactly it. I'm not much of an artist. I don't like to, I really don't think I have very many artistic skills, but I'm updating art for the project as I go, just because I feel like I agree with what people are saying in some regard. Like I'm sick of seeing the same, tiles for Labyrinth Zone, for example. So if I can give it a
Mm-hmm.
facelift in some way by at least updating the art to something a bit new, a bit fresh, at least then it doesn't feel like you're saying the same Labyrinth Zone. I understand that criticism, like I do,
Yeah.
again, sometimes it just feels like it's the first thing people do is they open up the ROM in an emulator and take one look at the art and go, "Oh, it's just blah 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 zone again." I get that. The
Yeah. They
first
don't.
thing they want to do is look at the
Yeah.
zone and go, "It doesn't look the same as a zone I've played 100 times." Even though it might be structured the same way, with the same chunks, the same collision, the same level gimmicks, it at least looks different. That gives you that first impression of it looks different already.
Yeah.
And I understand
I'm
that.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking what's happened is because so many people have made crappy layouts with these pieces that it's kind of saturated the market with rubbish, and that even if there are some decent things in there, like your version in the 2019 contest, even though it's there, it's saturated by all the other rubbish ones.
Yeah.
And I think that people's view on that, they're just, there's a high probability this is going to be rubbish. I ain't going to play the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name a hack's name, but I feel like my current project that I'm working on is like the exact opposite to one of the projects I saw in the last hacking contest, whereby all the levels had brand new art and brand new chunks made for them. And some of the objects have been changed, and there was new music, and visually in screenshots it looked really good.
Yeah.
Then when you get into the game and you play it, the layouts literally for the 8 zones that are in the game, the layouts for every level felt the same. Like you were literally encountering the same structure, which was, and I can pretty much remember this from the top of my head, was you walk forward and there's a wall. You walk back a little bit, there's a platform that takes you to a higher platform. You then jump up to the higher platform, go across for a little bit, there's a gap. If you don't jump over that gap and fall in, you then go back to the platform and climb back up.
So
If you jump over the gap, you run forward, down a slope, and oh look, repeat, there's another wall and a floating platform. I'm not even kidding, I encountered this in every single one of the 8 zones, literally within the first 10 seconds. And I was like, this is like the antithesis to what I'm trying to achieve. Everything is there that I would like, apart from level layouts. And I know that seems like a really petty thing to sort of like complain about.
I get where you're coming from.
But I feel like I have to like argue this point so many times. Like for example, even with the hacking contest, we've slowly moved away from the trophy names being what they were originally, which was with the names to like general stuff like best design and
the art trophy and
the art trophy, the music trophy.
Yeah.
My complaint was this year, and I don't mind saying this publicly because I've already said it as well to in public before, is there is no trophy anymore for level layouts, for the best level layout in a project. There isn't one. And when questioned, I was told that well, this is what's meant by best design, and I said, well, no, best design is not the same as best layout. Best design by design, the design of the level. It's in the name. And design doesn't mean layouts. Design to me means how the design of the level fits together in general. So you've got like the music, the art, and the layout as a collective, which makes that design.
Wasn't there talk somewhere about that, about renaming it? I can't remember where the talks were, but there was a talk about how what you would call it: level layout, level design. Level graphics, like what do you define? If I said to you level design, what does that mean to you?
To me, like I said, it feels like a collective of the music, the art, and the level layout.
So it's a whole package.
How does the whole package work? What is the hack with the best design? Me is like, does the music and the art and the level layout complement each other to the point where the design of the thing looks good?
And level layout you would define as the layout structure of the chunks and the object positions. Okay.
Exactly, Does the level layout flow properly? Does it feel like an original Sonic game? And that takes me back to one of the original trophies that no longer also exists, which was hack that feels most like an original Sonic game.
Yes.
There were 2 distinct trophies. There was that trophy, and then there was the best level layouts trophy. And they've both been replaced by best design, which to me feels like it's addressing something else entirely.
Yeah.
So that's my only criticism of that. And I understand how people have come to that conclusion. But to me, for example, if I was to give the hack that I mentioned before in the hacking contest last year, that hack could actually win best design because it had a coherent art style, it had good music, but the level layout was poor. But it could still be in a run, have a good shot in the design trophy. And that to me doesn't make any sense because that doesn't fulfill the layout, other than the layout trophy I feel should be there.
Exactly.
And there was another hack that had a few minor art edits and things like that definitely would have deserved it, but there was no trophy for it. Yeah. So, like to go back to your point, like I am working on a project that is trying to rectify some of the problems that I seem to encounter when people first play it. Which is they look at it and they say, oh, they see the same art. They say, oh yeah, it's insert zone here that I've seen 100 times. I don't feel like I want to play this because I think I know what to expect.
You want to hook people in.
Yeah. So I want something even if it's like I said, even if it's a minor art edits that I can achieve with my limited art skills, enough is look at it and go, oh, this looks slightly different.
Yeah.
I wonder if the gameplay's slightly different too, enough to hook them in to play it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping to achieve with that.
I think it. I mean, from the images that I've seen, some of your art edits have been fairly decent. Certainly not outstanding, but they are nice and they fit. They're nice and clean. There's an ordered structure to it. It's like, as far as I guess the color of it in terms of graphics is concerned, probably not that well. But in terms of shaping seems to be fine. So it all looks really good.
I've always struggled with making palettes that are quite pleasing to the eye, and obviously I've made jokes about that.
You and me both.
Calling myself out, But I don't. But the thing is, I'm just trying to achieve, like what I said, is trying to make a better first impression with the limited art skills that I have. And if I can achieve that, then that means that maybe one or two more people might play more than just what they think is Green Hill Zone again for the X amount of time.
Yeah.
And then go, there's not much has changed. Because I have had criticism in the past where I've had somebody's played a project of mine and they've literally turned around and gone, oh, it's the same apart from the colours are different. Ass. And it's like, oh, so you've not given it a chance. You didn't actually
play it.
You're
okay.
literally looking at it. I mean, that's, but I can kind of see why they'd say that though. Like I said before, like if you look at it and it looks the same, then you might be right in assuming that. I can see why you might assume that.
It's very tempting to make a hack it's really, really brilliant, really awesome, like fantastic art, fantastic music, really good gameplay, but you deliberately and wittingly make the intro, title screen, and the beginning of the first level look like a normal layout hack, and that they have to get past that to really appreciate the rest of it. So once you get past that, suddenly, wow! But you keep it a secret.
I mean, it would.
You think that would that mean? I mean,
I think no, I don't. The thing is, I think if anything, it would show you how many people actually are willing to play more than just say for the first level, and that is actually information that I think we technically do have. We know most people would look at it and go, oh, play the first couple of seconds, but go, this is Green Hill Zone, I'm done.
You want to reward exploration. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like I said, your art skills aren't that bad, and it looks good enough for my liking, at least. I'm pretty sure other people will appreciate it, and I'm also certain that people are going to play your project. They are going to come in, they're going to see it and go, "Oh, this is new." They're going to play it some more, and hopefully they'll appreciate your layout a bit more respectively.
Well, I hope so. I mean, one of the things that I do want to achieve, if I can get I've had some issues with obviously Soned 2 and the importing background. So if I can get Son level working properly on my end, I'd like to be able to import backgrounds from other places. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to draw my own, but if I can at least import like a different background for some of the levels, at least then you're then not looking at the same background that you're used to as well. And that's something I'd like to at least try to do. And if I can get that working, at least then, like I said, that then already cements the fact that it looks different, and you can see some extra work's been put in there.
Here's actually,
we'll see. But
here's actually something I just sort of I didn't even think about this. I mean, you've used ESC, you've used ESC2, you've used Soned 2. Have you ever been involved in a project where you've used Son LVL?
Well, that's what I mean. Son level, yeah.
Okay.
I've been.
Probably everyone pronounces it Son level, and I'm the only idiot that's it's on LVL.
No, it's fine. No, that's the thing. If I can get that working on my end, then that would obviously open up a few extra features that Son level has that I have not been able to use yet. But the issue is, I've already explained to main memory before, I seem to have issues with installing it. I don't fully understand the process, so I think it might require somebody just to sort of sit down with me and help me with the initial installation process and how to run it. But once I've got past that step, I think that shouldn't be a problem.
I know what you mean. At first it took me I used it before.
Yeah.
And then I didn't use it, and then years later I had a project where I was supposed to use it, and I downloaded the installer, and it took me about a good 5 to 10 minutes to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. And
yeah, I mean,
there is a bit of a learning curve to that.
Me, little bit intimidating because there's like so many different options. I don't quite understand what they do. Like I downloaded the
Hmm.
installer, like tick the boxes you want, but I'm like, I don't even know what I need at this point. Like I don't understand what you're asking of me. And obviously, for anybody who's used the tool or main memory herself who's developed it, it makes sense to
Yeah,
them. To me, I don't quite understand what you're asking of me. And then I tried downloading obviously some projects and I got something back, but I'm like, okay, so now what do I do with them? Like, what do I
yeah,
do with projects? Like, and that's what I mean. I feel like this, getting past that initial step is the problem. As soon as I figured that out, then I'll be able to start looking at how to import files. I know obviously that I've seen people do this, and they say, "Oh, it's quite easy. You just click the import, you pull an image in, as long as it's got the right palette with it, and there you go. You've now got tiles imported. You can now use them." And it's like, well, that sounds great, but I don't understand how to get to that point.
yeah. I mean, I'm assuming you have used it before in the
No, that's the thing. I've
past.
never been able to get it to work.
You, oh, okay. Ah, that's interesting. Because I was going to ask you, like, your views on it, like, in conjunction to ESC and Sonid, but I guess I can't really
No, I
ask you
mean
now.
I've only ever used Soned 2 as the most recent sort of tool I still use, but it's even by
Yeah,
that standard, I know that what its limitations are because I've used it for such a long time now.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I will say for the record, in my experience, if you want to make layouts, Son LVL seems to be, or Son Level
yeah,
seems to be. Don't judge me.
it's fine.
Son LVL tends to be, I guess, better.
Yeah, it looks better because especially with the larger resolution window, yeah, being forced to still use a tiny window that Soned 2 has is restricting, to say the least.
And at least in terms of public releases, I've had some private Sonid releases because I've worked on various projects that have required them. So there are some extra things which I think would have been awesome. Obviously, I can't really say much about them, but if I were to go by the public release, I would say that if you want to make art, I mean, like proper, like tiles, blocks, and chunks. If you want to construct them, Son Ed 2 is better. That's in my opinion. It just seems because it's to do with quicker and easier. It's quicker and easier to construct art blocks and chunks in Sonid 2,
Yes.
but it's easier and quicker to do layouts in Son LVL. I think it's slightly more stable.
I mean that's something I'm hoping to experience myself once I finally get it working. So
Yeah, I mean, I would still be interested in hearing your views on that when you do eventually get to using it. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Main Memory's listening to this now. Maybe she'll say, "Oh, hey, are you stupid? Just all you had to do was click this button." You're like, "Oh, God, really?"
I mean, it might be something like that. It might be just me making something simple be overly complicated. But
Yeah.
yes, it's fine.
She's always doing that to me. It's always like, well, this seems a bit well complicated. She says, well, did you do this? I'm like, oh, now I feel like an idiot.
Yeah. Oh well, that wasn't obvious, or was it?
Oh, God. One thing, I mean, you spoke very briefly about this, but your job it involves programming,
Yes.
and
I mean,
I mean, you
yeah.
mentioned very briefly about hexadecimal being sort of a useful asset. Well, what about assembly programming? I mean, obviously I know you don't know too much, but has it in any way sort of helped you with your programming job?
Not really. No. I mean, the my job. I mean, I can give you a little bit of context of my job actually. I'm a software developer, but I'm an online software developer. So I develop
Hmm.
stuff mostly in JavaScript and HTML. Uh, we develop online software for our clients. I'm not going to explain what that is because that's sort of out of the context. But
Hmm.
we develop software for them as part of my job, and we're a small company. We only have like 10 employees, so we're a small local company that develops for some really big clients. But obviously, because we're so small, we take a long time to sort of develop that software. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about more modern programming and things like that. So, for example, most of our work now is in React, which is like JavaScript ES6, I think, which is like the most like up to date version of JavaScript that people work with.
It's like a full environment. Like
Oh no, we develop everything in Visual Studio.
Notepad.
No, Visual
Oh, okay.
Studio. So we all obviously have access to a repository at work where we develop on the same product, the same systems, but it's all just like I said, mostly modern JavaScript and HTML in the front end, and the back end is mostly in Lotus script, which most people probably wouldn't have heard of, but yeah, it's an interesting environment and an interesting language to have picked up as part of my job. It's a niche area that not a lot of developers work in, but it has its challenges, its pitfalls, but it also has its advantages for some of the things that brings. But yeah, it's a lot different to anything I've ever thought I would ever be doing. I mean, I never thought I'd be a software developer. That was never the intention. I always wanted to do something with computers, but
like building or
it was
or...
the idea in my head was, I can build. I'll be able to build some computers. I'll be able to build people's PCs for them. That was the original idea, but that never really panned out. Then I did obviously computing at college, and I was excelling in my courses, and then they were like, well, what do you want? I went then applied for university. I applied for a computing course, which was quite a bit more programming. I didn't. The only thing that I seemed to, I mean, I excelled at university, but the one thing that I seemed to pick up easily and be able to enjoy working with was JavaScript, which I know is going to make a lot of people cringe, because I understand that there's a bit of a stigma when you say you're a software developer and you say you're working in JavaScript. A lot of people in that
hold on, I'll hold that thought, because like it isn't JavaScript, isn't that like the most common language now?
I mean,
at the moment, this current point in time.
I mean, put it this way: any website you're probably looking at on the internet probably uses JavaScript. Every single website. Yeah. So even Discord, for example, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, they're all written using JavaScript. I mean, Facebook itself is using literally React 6.
Even mobile apps, it's the same sort of thing. It's mostly JavaScript.
Yeah, so obviously, when you're on a website and you can, on a desktop computer, you can right-click and inspect element, and it will show you the HTML code, and then you can also click into JavaScript files and see the JavaScript. Yeah, all of that, that's the sort of stuff I write on a regular basis for the company that I work for. So,
do you write anything that any of us would have ever come in contact with? I mean, I'm assuming not, but just...
I mean, no, probably not. I mean, like I said, we work for some high-profile clients, but they use the software we develop internally. It's not like it's available to the public anymore.
Okay, right, yeah.
So we develop like systems for these people to use for like their day-to-day processes, their finances, their projects, whatever it is. That's what that manages. Most of the time, yeah. I mean, some of the, I'm not going to mention the clients because I feel like that's
no, of course
but
not.
Some of them you've probably definitely heard of. Like, I will say that. But you definitely probably heard those clients, and they would have probably used our software internally in developing, say, software that you might have definitely used in the public. So yeah,
so indirectly,
yeah.
I mean, one thing I am actually curious about. I mean, with your dyspraxia,
yes,
in particular, and your slow typing, do you do a lot of copying and pasting, like highlighting with the mouse, and
that
saves a lot of time?
It does, and the thing is as well, as a software developer, like, you'd be surprised at how much you do this as second nature without thinking too much about it, because it saves time.
Yes.
But there is obviously issues attached, issues as a result of doing that too often, which become apparent as a junior software developer. But I've been working with the same company for 6 years now, and I'm no longer a junior software developer, so I'm kind of past those. But yeah, you end up usually repeating yourself in ways that you shouldn't. And the last thing you want to do in code is say, take a function, copy it, make a slight edit to it, and then do this 10 times, and then realize you could have just had one function that you pass a variable into. For example, but you do this without thinking, and then the next thing you know, people are just reviewing the same code over and over again. That's not.
Yeah, if
That's
you got to change one, you got to change all the others.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. So you want to as a like I can write software at an acceptable pace that you know is where my dyspraxia barely affects things, which is great. At the same time, I am aware that
Are you more prone to making like a function, usable function, because of dyspraxia? I mean, would you say that?
it doesn't. I don't really think it affects that. To be honest, I think it's more
No, no,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, as part of my job anyway, we're expected to sort of make functions reusable, keep just general practices with as being a software developer, so keeping code tidy, reusable, as efficient as possible. Those are the basics of writing code, and obviously following them is not too much of a problem. I mean, I've never been called up on the speed of my work. Put it that way. The 6 years I've been
Oh,
working.
that's nice.
So in the 6 years of working for the company, I've never been called up and said, "Oh, you're taking too long on this," or
Yeah, stop working on DA Garden Edition. 6 years, man. Come on.
no. I mean, I've never been called out for my work
Yeah.
speed, and that to me means that I must be doing something right. And yeah, if I have to put in the extra effort to get there, I don't. It's never felt like, I've had to ever go above and beyond what get general work done, which has always been an advantage to me. Like I'm glad that that's not affected that.
That's good. I mean, do you feel comfortable where you're working? Are you, in a
Yeah,
good atmosphere? It's a small group, so I assume a small
yeah. I
business.
mean, that's the
Usually
thing. Like
it's going to
I've
be,
never my job's.
you know.
I've not got a problem with my job whatsoever. One of the reasons I took the job after when I was almost finished university and I was applying for jobs. There's a couple of reasons I took the job. One was because it was local to me and my family, which was a benefit, obviously. And the other one was because one of the things that the person who was doing the interview and was a manager of the company, he turned around to me and he said, "We just want to make it clear to you, this position is, usually looked on as a permanent position. We don't mind if you see, we usually only hire people if they want to be with us on a long-term basis. Now, obviously, you can't know that right now, but if your intention is to work with us for 2 years and then work for somebody else, we don't really want, we can't stop people like that from taking this job, but we hope that you're not one of those people. We want to ensure that you stay
Yeah,
with
yeah,
us for a
yeah.
long time, and obviously we do jobs like and I said to him, I said, finding a job like that in this modern market is quite difficult. Finding a job that's more than just temporary for X amount of months or years is usually
Yeah,
not.
you don't want a
Yeah,
gig.
yeah, exactly. And the amount of people I know who will take a job, work there for 2 years, and then move to another company, or they'll, work there for 6 months and then they'll just quit and they'll work somewhere else. And it's like I don't want that to happen. I just want to know that the one thing I don't want to have to worry about is I haven't got a job because I was unemployed for so long before I went to college to university and then got this job. I don't want to have to then have that be as a worry anymore in my life.
You want security.
Yeah, and the fact that that's what they were offering me, and I said to them, I was like, I'm more than willing to work for this company for years. Like, I'd rather stick here and learn everything I need to learn to stay working for you guys than I would want to move around because it's just too much hassle. And I'd
Yeah.
rather know that I don't have to worry about that. And at the interview, we were just both in agreement. I think like they wanted to offer me a job where they knew that it was permanent. I'd stay with them for a long time, and I wanted that security. And luckily, the job offers both of those. So yeah,
Yeah, that's really. I'm really happy for you. That's really great. And yeah, no, I'm kind of jealous.
I mean,
No,
I'm always grateful for my job. Though that's the one thing I will say. I'm always grateful for my job. I'm grateful for the fact that they need me, and they want me to still work for them. And I'm grateful for the fact that I'm giving the company what it needs in the form of an employee. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm grateful for
yeah.
that, and I'm great, and the fact that they are in agreement with that. And every time I have my annual review with them, they confirm that they still need me there. That I'm doing a good job, and I'm just like that's all I want to hear. Because if that ever
Yeah,
changes, I'm like let me know, and I want to know what I've done wrong. But the fact that that
yeah, yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
happened, that to me is a positive thing. It's like yeah,
That's a good sign. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. No, I'm really happy for you. It's really great. I think we're about ready to, I guess, wrap things up. Unless there's anything else you'd like to talk about, anything that's
Uh,
on your mind,
I mean, there is one small thing I want to mention. It's really strange, but just bear with me. So, as a Sonic fan, and anybody who's a Sonic fan is listening, or if you've ever had an interest in a franchise before, that where you felt like the franchise might be coming to its end, and this has happened a lot in Sonic's history, whereby games come out
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
been poorly received, and then received backlash and all that sort of thing. This has happened a lot with the Sonic franchise. Obviously, it's been, it happened with the Saturn era, with the end of the '06 era, and then obviously again
It's
after
been butchered
generations.
to death.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's
And it still
happened.
limps along.
But to hang on to a franchise as long as I have with Sonic for as many years as I have, it has its ups and downs. It can be challenging, but it can also be incredibly rewarding to be with something that long. And the amount of people you meet along the way who become like lifelong friends, who share that interest with you, that passion with you, like that's something you can't take away. And I'm incredibly grateful every single day that I have friends like MarkeyJester that, that share that have the same interests that I do in Sonic, that can happily sit and talk about these things. Because without the Sonic franchise, I wouldn't have met him, and I wouldn't have met anybody else a part of this community that I'm still now friends with. You know what I mean? And I struggled with that a lot growing up, making friends that I felt that were there for lifelong friends. I struggled with that, and obviously I had Miller as my friend growing up, and I still have him as my friend now, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm also grateful for the people like I said, like Marky Jester and everybody else in the Sonic Retro community that I am friends with. I'm grateful that I've met them, and I'm grateful that they are willing to give me the time of day to be friends with me too. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Really, I just want to say thank you for giving me the time, giving me your time, and if you ever want to talk about ROM hacking or ROM or layouts in ROM hacks or anything, me a message because you know where I am.
No, that's very sweet to hear from you. I think a lot of people would probably feel the exact same way. I think a lot of people probably have grown up in similar circumstances where maybe they haven't had many friends. I never did, I think that's perhaps the reason why we bond, because we're relatable as a community. I think that's part of the reason. But that's very touching. It's very.
That's all I wanted to say. So.
Okay. I think that will do it for one evening. Thank you very much for coming on. It was a wonderful, wonderful interview. Very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I had a good time myself. It's been interesting reminiscing on the past and what has led me to be here today. Like I said, I've met a lot of interesting characters. I've seen a lot of interesting things as part of this community. The Sonic community, but in general, it's shaped my life and the person that I am today. But I wouldn't give up any of it. It's all of it, even through the ups and the downs. It sort of shaped not only the person I am online, but also the person I am in my outside of the internet. And I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, again, thank you very much for having me on.
No, the pleasure is all mine. The people listening as well. Right, everybody, thank you for listening. If you've listened throughout the whole interview, a big shout out and thank you to Mr. Cat Pixel for his lovely classical-esque music, a new friend, and thank you to Project FM for his track Icescape. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and maybe if this gets enough sort of upbeat, maybe we'll have another episode and I'll interview someone else. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye then.